Good evening. Good evening. Welcome to the Colfax City Council meeting, February 28th, 2024. Ty Connors, would you lead us
I will certainly.
in the pledge?
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation.
Play basketball. Play ball. City Clerk, would you read the roll?
Councilmember Burris. Here. Hilberg.
Here.
McCauley.
Here.
Loman.
Here.
And Mayor Douglas.
Present. Okay. May I have approval of the agenda order? Or does anybody want to change the order of the agenda?
Move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Next is a statement of conflict of interest. Has there been any changes?
Nope.
And,
Nope.
Nobody's become, won the lottery? Okay. Item 5, no, item 3, consent calendar. Does anybody want to pull anything from the agenda or shall we?
Can we pull 3C?
No.
All right, thanks.
What was that?
3C?
3.
3C? No, 3C.
C.
3C.
Chocolate.
Okay, 3C. All righty. Do we have approval of the consent calendar with 3B being pulled?
3C.
3C.
I approve, I motion that we approve it with the removal of 3C.
I second. In favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Sean, did you want to discuss 3C?
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight the fact that we're sending Trinity. I think it's really important that we're sending her to the cap to cap. Really appreciate that she's willing to go again this year. And I know she's done a lot of good work there and a lot of good lobbying. So even though we're a small town, it's important to get our name out there. So just wanted to highlight our appreciation for you going
Thank you. I appreciate it.
and move to approve 3C.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstained? Motion,
I'm sorry, we didn't take public comment on the item. You might. wanna
public
just
comment on?
solicit it.
any
There might not be
public
any,
comment?
but
Agency reports. Placer County Sheriff.
Actually, I was gonna bring up Ty Connors, Lieutenant Ty Connors with the Sheriff's Office to speak as a guest speaker, but he told me no. So I apologize, Mr. Mayor, City Council, Sergeant Kevin Griffiths, Colfax City Station Commander for the Sheriff's Office here. You know, this has been an interesting year, weather, everything else, and we've talked about the advanced officer training that we've done for our deputies, which we do every year. But this year is unique. Today, I got to participate in one that was different, that I've never participated in the 20 years that I've been a cop, that was all about the mental health of our deputies out there on the street. There was a deputy from Texas, Anne Marie Carrizales. She's been involved in a couple of shootings, shot herself. She goes around the country speaking about the fight after the fight. We train all the time for the fight in that moment, right? Whether it's whatever we have to approach to be able to go home alive. And we always talk about going home at the end of the day. Well, when you go home after some of these traumatic incidents that a lot of us have faced, there's another fight that you have to deal with. You have to deal with that fight with your family, with yourself. What did I do wrong? What did I do right? And she spoke very well and opened the eyes of a lot of our deputies today with the help that's out there, who they can talk to, and that not a single one of us is alone on that fight. And there's a lot of support out there. So to have this agency do that is pretty unique, and it's just starting for California. It kind of takes after the military with the 22, right? 22 soldiers who kill themselves every day. They're starting to look at cops as that way and making sure that we're taking care of our deputies. Our cops are different now. When I started, you were looking at a retirement of 3 for 50. So I could theoretically work 30 years and see my full retirement. Now their percentage, instead of being 3%, is down around 2.7 at 57.5. So a cop that starts at 21 has to do about 35 years in this job with all the traumatic experiences they're seeing. And we're trying to figure out how to do that to make it beneficial for those cops, for those young guys who are out there, because the divorce rate is something crazy in law enforcement. And we're trying to reduce a lot of that and make it healthier. So that was awesome that the sheriff's office here in Placer County is doing that. On a side note, maybe not so cheery for some of us who enjoy the snow are looking forward to the winter this weekend. Not necessarily in the impact that it's going to have on our area, but I will tell you, I've updated all of our deputies in Colfax as to their responsibilities during the snowstorm. You will see them over by the freeways if we get shut down here in Colfax to try to take care of the traffic problems that are out there with that. We've also stationed our snowcat here in Colfax at the county yard. So if there's a need for that, and 2 snowmobiles. I've talked to all my search and rescue deputies who are all trained on driving those pieces of equipment. And I'm putting a list together to make sure I know who to call if there's something that is needed up here in the city. I know that I'll be close to home, and a lot of my deputies will be close to home in case there is a need up here. So please, and I know Cal Fire and Lieutenant Ty Connors with OES have been working on plans for the winter storm this weekend, and OES will be open just for that. There's a lot of plans and a lot of work going into making sure the city and the rest of the county can be taken care of if there's a storm. So please call me. Absolutely. If you have anything, call me. I'll relay it to OES and make sure we're taken care of as a city. Is there any questions for me that I can answer? Perfect.
Thank you. Next is CHP.
Good evening, council and mayor, Officer Jason Lyman at the Gold Run CHP, Public Information Officer. As Sergeant Griffiths said, this weekend is going to be trying for everybody, I believe. They're, predicting this to be a very substantial storm, and they're not going away from that. So you never know with all the predictions when it's a week out or so, but they're still sticking with it. So it's likely to be very substantial. So we are got as many people out on the road as we can. We've got several people on overtime. We're trying to fill as many positions as we can out there on the road. Going to be working very closely with Caltrans and doing the chain control and making sure that people are doing what they're supposed to be doing. Very likely there will be some issues with running people through Colfax, especially if the road gets shut down. That's a problem that we always have to deal with. But hopefully between ourselves and the sheriff's department, we're going to hit it with all we got to try to make it as smooth as possible. And hopefully the roads will hold up and we won't have to close down the road. We'll see what we can do with that. A few statistics that we've got for our department for January. We made 6 arrests. 4 of them were DUI related. We had 168 citations were written. And then due to all the rain and stuff that we had quite a few traffic collisions. We had 31 traffic collisions and 9 of them were injury collisions. Thankfully, none of them were real serious injuries, but nevertheless, any injury is too much. So we're trying to be out there as best we can and do what we can to help out everybody. Anybody have any questions?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Cal Fire.
All right, good evening, council. Bob Counts, Assistant Chief with Cal Fire. To tie in with the other reports for the significant storm this weekend, we're expecting really strong winds and low snow, possibly around 2,000 feet, even lower. We are increasing our staffing as a precautionary measure for any storm-related responses. We are staffing chainsaw teams out of Placer Center Camp in Christian Valley, as well as the County of Placer is going to mission task through the state of California our crews at Placer Center just for Placer County to be able to respond to any sort of needs that they have, whether it's down trees or opening up roadways or shoveling snow or whatever the case may be. We're also going to staff extra engines and extra battalion chiefs and overhead, just as a precautionary measure for anything that might happen this weekend. Our hydrant testing within the city limits is continuing. We are almost complete. We have 5 hydrants left, so we're creating lists of potential repairs that need to take place and making fixes on the go as well. The next project after the hydrant testing is complete, we're going to go back around and paint all of them. So that'll be ongoing. And that's all I have tonight, unless there's any questions.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, item 5, presentation. Oh, nonprofit. Nonprofit. Well, then I was correct. Presentation. Does anybody have a presentation? 5A.
Skate park.
Skate park.
I need to ask a question.
You need to recuse yourself and leave the dais. You can stay in the room, but you can't participate.
That's okay. And as I understand, I'd like to make sure I understand the reason why.
Because your property is within 500 feet of the property upon which a skate park is planned to be installed.
So there's an acknowledgement that people within 500 feet are affected by a skate park. That's in the law, right? And I just have one more thing to say. We are 60 feet from that skate park with our property. So clearly I have to leave.
You only have to leave the dais. You can stay in the room and observe.
But I can't speak.
That's correct.
Should he stand in the corner?
Oh, that's up to you.
Hello, Mayor, City Council. Again, my name's Ty Connors. Lieutenant gets tossed out because I'm with the Colfax Skate Park and with the Colfax Green Machine. As far as the presentation goes, I thought about doing a PowerPoint and all that, but I really wanted you guys to focus on me and on the information that I'm giving to you. Because again, this is obviously dear to my heart and you know, all the efforts that have gone through it with the Colfax Green Machine supporting this, you know, for the past 9 years. As a 9 years, and I'm to this point where I'm actually going in front of you and, you know, trying to go into a different direction. But, you know, again, for some of that, a lot of people know the history of kind of where we've been with the skate park. Again, as the station commander, like Kevin, you know, that's kind of how it started. I'll just kind of give a quick brief of why we're even here, because I think painting a picture and you know, right now we have a blank canvas, but for you to make a decision on something that's pretty significant is knowing why we're here. You know, again, when I started the skate park project is being that station commander, trying to give something for our youth and, you know, in the, you know, city limits of Colfax is, you know, I try to look at different locations. I mean, I went to 3 or 4 different locations before we even got to this point. You know, I first tried it in the Roy Thomas Plaza when I first kind of pitched this idea, is trying to get some kind of like skate park or some kind of recreational thing for the youth. Actually at the Roy Thomas Plaza, which actually is owned by Southern Pacific Railroad. So when I actually got pretty far up into the ranks with them, they really actually enjoyed having something like this. And once it got to the higher levels, they said, no way, we're never going to have anything like that next to the railroad tracks when it comes to it. So again, just kind of doing my tour when it comes to finding a location. Again, I knew that the pool site at the time was a potential location, wasn't my primary location. You know, and then again, once the city, a few city councils ago, finally decided that, you know, a pool was not going to happen, that's when I actually approached the city on it. I actually looking into the Sierra Vista Community Center, reached out to their board, kind of pitched this to them, obviously them being a private industry, not owned by city, that it was a potential location that we'd be able to try and do a skate park. Went through the process with them, kind of did my own little, they wanted kind of like a neighborhood study on, you know, how many people would want that to happen or not. That process obviously took over a year to happen. We did our own, and then the board at the time wanted to do their own kind of survey and ultimately got turned down going there. So again, that's where we wound up into the baseball field area, or basically the old pool site. Again, with some of you were on council, some were not, approving the old pool site as the skate park. That being said, we started going full steam ahead when it came to, any type of fundraising. And, again, a 9-year history of trying to raise funds through the nonprofit. Part of my pitch when I first started, this was we're not going to use or try to use any type of general funds when it comes from the city, that we're going to try to complete this project through the nonprofit with the Green Machine. And with that being said, it's been a very long road trying to raise money. Just to kind of highlight some of the key factors to it is we were able to, the first people to ever, the Fights family during our concert that we had over here at the theater donated $10,000 towards the project. Overall, over the past several years, over the 9 years, we've probably raised over $135,000 through the nonprofit, through the Green Machine. Obviously, we've had to spend numerous amounts of money with that when it comes to moving forward. We spent well over $20,000 into the current engineered plans that we had. And then also spending an additional almost $6,000 on the noise study when it came to, the skate park itself, because of some neighbors were concerned of the actual noise. And so we spent over $6,000 on donated money through the nonprofit. And one thing I did kind of go back, my first initial thought with the skate park is I actually worked with the National Ramp Company, and I was going to go metal ramps when it came to the skate park. When we kind of did my own neighborhood study when it came to it, there were some concerns. Some people that were very close to the skate park had concerns over the metal ramps. And so we kind of took that into effect, and I went down to El Dorado Hills. They actually have a metal ramp skate park. The noise was pretty significant to me. So in taking that consideration to the neighbors, that's why we moved and transitioned into a concrete skate park. But once you go to metal to concrete, an extremely significant cost comes into effect. So that's why, again, it's taken so long to get to this point. We've reached out to, and again, I can't thank the support that we've had from the board and the people from the Green Machine. They've been real supportive, and the community itself. But when it comes to it, actually looking at where we've started from ground zero to where we're at now, and the support that we've had is significant, very significant. And, when it comes and just kind of highlight some of the things that we've had is, again, we had the Placer County Park and Rec fees. They donated a couple years ago, $75,000. Colfax is actually on the grand master plan when it comes to the county itself. Is the Colfax skate park is on that plan. So they're wanting to support that. With the help with the 2018, that got Parks and Bond Act per capita grant, we got 177,925. And then on top of, with all the support that we've had through our own fundraising, some of the key people I kind of want to name off when it comes to supporting the skate park itself, the Smith family estate, it's donated over $30,000. We've got Tony Hawk Foundation, $10,000. Woodward Boreal was $20,000. The Fights family, $10,000. Recology, Kiwanis, Colfax Lioness, all have contributed to this, and well over 100 bricks that we've done fundraising through, of getting names of supporters. Again, some of the big in-kind donations, again, I feel that they wouldn't be supporting this if they didn't think it was important for the youth and people in our community, and knowing that Colfax doesn't really have a lot to give for that kind of recreation. Tykert in itself is one of our biggest supporters, probably about $60,000 in concrete aggregate. Robinson's Gravel, donating over $12,000 of transportation. Diamond Pacific Lumber, Triton Construction, Colfax Best Western, River City Rentals, Sierra Pipe of Auburn, Milo Sports. Again, all huge supporters of this. I have Robert Dugan over here, the president of CalSEMA, again, being a huge supporter of this as far as with the aggregate labor force, and also Crystal Howard with Cornerstone Project. Colfax right now during this project through Cornerstone Project, they want to showcase the concrete and aggregate field and want to make the Colfax project a nationally recognized effort through, obviously through a nonprofit, but also just trying to show people the labor force when it comes to the materials. But with that being said, 9 years is a long time. 9 years of, we've all been through a lot of different things when it comes to our own, when it comes to the economy. We hit COVID, COVID was a huge hit when it came to the Colfax skate park and raising money. And you might hear from some of the, public speaking afterwards with especially with Robert, is the fact that, it's a moving target and law enforcement hitting a moving target is very difficult. So trying to raise money to get to our goal has been, we getting close saying, hey, you need to raise 400,000, you need to raise 600,000. And we keep trying to do that. And then once we get to that goal, it's a year or two later, and now things have changed. So where I'm at today is basically, and again, thank you very much for Carl. He's been a huge help. Wes was a huge help, obviously, with this as well. Wes actually had this idea coming in. We thought we had enough money going out to bid, is once they kind of did a full study and they're looking at our current design and everything that we had, that it came out to about $598,000 just in labor, because it is a prevailing wage job. Again, this was a huge hit to us because we thought that we had enough money to go out to bid. But once we did that, it just really showed how the economy and everything, inflation and all that stuff we couldn't get to that mark. So speaking with Wes at the time, he brought up, obviously with the Colfax skate park, or with the Colfax Park and Rec fees, there was some additional funding, or there was some funding there that possibly that we can go for. Obviously it go toward, it's a Park and Rec site, because it is at that location. So again, I'm telling the community, I'm telling council, this was not my objective. My objective was to do this all through the nonprofit. 9 years of dedication of my time, the Colfax Green Machines time, the numerous amounts of stuff that we've done, is I need help. And we got to a cornerstone to where if we want to get this project across the finish line, we cannot do this without additional help. And again, I apologize, I'll eat crow when it comes to that, when it comes to the fact that this was not my objective to sit there and ask the city to use some general funds for the skate park project, 100%. With that being said, we did have a call from Andy Fisher, one that director with Placer County Park and Rec. They've been a huge supporter. Going in front of their commission in March. He did mention that it's not a match, but it would be helpful going into their meeting. They are looking at, and he's kind of greasing the skids, especially with Supervisor Gustafson and the commission, when it comes to potentially adding an additional $130,000 onto this project above and beyond the 75 they've already given. So, but he said it would be helpful, obviously, to kind of have some support from the city when it comes to that. And so that's where we're at today. So I, again, will ask any questions when it comes to it. I've been in front of you guys numerous amount of times, numerous years when it comes to this. I really, again, the longer we wait, the more it puts pressure on our in-kind donations. Back then it might have been 40, 30, 5,000, 40,000, but now we're getting up in the $60,000 range because things are taking so long to get there. So this was, again, unforeseen things that we ran into. And again, I'm looking for the Colfax City support.
Okay, I guess it's time for discussion.
I have a million
Questions?
questions.
How many questions?
Not really a million, but they are a lot. So obviously we are all here on the same boat that we have a problem and we all need to figure out how to solve it. And that's non-negotiable. We all have to figure out a solution here. So with that in mind, I don't want to sound like I'm grilling you because I'm asking a bunch of questions, but I want to make sure that I'm taking us down the right path of, least resistance. So in a perfect world where we're able to get these funds, assuming the county is able to provide their funds, when would you break ground?
So if, again, if the stars align, and again, part of the other portion of this is, again, our current design that we had cost this much.
Right.
And so we have to kind of readjust what our wish list
Mhm.
to now what reality is. And
Right.
again, a lot of help from Carl on this was that we had to kind of adjust maybe our design. And that's another thing, looking at the council, you guys already voted in the first, initial design is giving us the opportunity to basically redesign to fit current budget.
Mhm.
That way, we're staying within our parameters, we're staying within current budget. So there might be some tweaks to the current design, but obviously the more we have to go towards it, the more we can stay within the current design that we have.
Right.
So ultimately, and again, Carl might be able to help out with some of this, but if Colfax agrees, if council agrees, and if we do get the additional funding, we'll have the initial set budget for the design companies to tweak that design to meet that current the budget that we have.
Right.
And that way we can move forward with trying to break ground. Again, I'm not quite sure when it comes to the bidding process or how long that bidding process takes when it comes, because obviously being a city project
Mhm.
has to go out to bid. But once it goes out to bid and you get that person that's going to take on that project, as far as them breaking ground, it's all the availability of that. I am hoping, if anything, if all goes well, that we hopefully can maybe break ground by summer. But again, that's just some of those parameters when it comes to that bidding process. I'm not sure on that part.
Carl, does that sound realistic or a little bit too ambitious?
I think we'd be looking at probably 6 to 8 weeks for a redesign.
Right.
And then you've got a couple of weeks for review and then back and forth. So we're probably 3 months before plan approval. And then another month and a half at least to get council approval and to go out to bid.
Okay, so we're probably looking at late summer, early fall.
At least midsummer, yeah.
So this question is gonna make everybody just very uncomfortable.
Bring it,
But
Trinity.
would you be willing if, and this is again, we're talking perfect world stars align type situations. Again, prevailing wage is a huge issue here that is really hampering our ability to see this project at the scale we want, the materials we want, a lot of those kind of things. So if in the time frame that it took for us to kind of stay on schedule, if the city was able to, again, perfect world, negotiate an ideal location that wouldn't require the prevailing wage, and we were able to make that secured, would that kill the project, or would that be a possibility you guys would be willing to shift with?
See,
us
one
on?
thing when it comes to, and I don't know the actual cost when it comes to it, because once you move that location, one
Mhm.
thing that's actually very good about the location, it's already zoned recreational.
Right.
So you don't have to do the environmental studies and all the different things that go with going to a location that's not zoned recreational.
Mhm.
So with that being said, obviously there's additional costs that would go into that if you move to a location that's going to be not zoned recreational.
So let's assume for a second zoned recreational already.
Well, to me, again, I want this project to be done,
Okay.
and again, when it comes to a location that's already zoned recreational, I mean, that's again a city,
Yeah.
because that's.
And I
a
know
big
I'm being
part of it is
cryptic.
this being a city, if you're going into private, and that's one thing, actually, we worked with Mick a long time ago when we talked about the community center.
Right.
That there have to be some type of agreement, because eventually it will be a city, because with liability and the insurance and all that stuff that goes with it, would fall under that.
There's another aspect to it too. If you're gonna pay fully or in part out of public funds, prevailing wages must be paid.
Okay.
So that if you're gonna put any city money into it, it's gotta be a prevailing wage job.
Okay.
Is that the same with county money too? If they're taking the county money?
Yes.
So if they want the county money and the city money, you're stuck with prevailing wage.
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay. So it's good to know that we're not getting away from that no matter what we do. Okay. What is the anticipated total cost of the project as we stand today? If you had to put a number on it, and I understand that that might be a really.
With our
niche
current
number.
design,
Yes.
So right now, if like say the current design was 598,000, it just in labor itself.
Mhm.
And then if you add the aggregate and all the other materials that go on it, it could be about an $800,000 project.
Okay.
When it comes to everything that's being done with our current design that we have. Now, again, what we're trying to transition to with the redesign is kind of shooting for that $600,000 project. You know, when
Right.
it comes to the skate park, they'll design it to fit that current budget.
And so where are we at right now with current funds available?
So as far as the funds that we actually have currently right now, we have so we have 175,000 through the grant, or 177,925. We have $75,000 with the Placer County Park and Rec fees. And we have $94,000 in with Colfax Green Machine, because we have an additional 15,000 coming in from the Smith family estate. And then on top of that, with our in-kind donations, so we're roughly hitting around, you know, potentially around a $500,000 mark, or about $450,000 mark right now. And so, you know, again, with that being said, you know, significantly reduces the size of the skate park in itself and their overall design. Because on top of this, with having to redesign, there's an additional cost that's obviously going to go with it. And it's unfortunate that our design that we currently have, we spent over $25,000 in engineered plans. Redesigning that 25,000 is basically going out the window, which is unfortunate. Working with the companies and already talking with them is that this is typically kind of common with nonprofit skate parks, is you kind of have to redesign. But with that redesign is that it comes with, you know, all the plans that go to specs that the city's in support of, but also comes with potentially a project manager that's obviously in, knows and understands skate parks and how that's built. But one proposal we have right now is $59,000 in order to redesign on top of our project manager. So again, that's an additional cost on what we're doing right now.
No, that's definitely helpful. Okay, and so it's the 130,000 county. Okay,
So
Kevin, I have a
I
question
sent that
for
letter.
you. Yeah, can you come on up too?
Oh, man. Use him.
So I know that we've already gone over, you know, a lot of the security concerns. We've gone over a lot of those plans. We've gone over a lot of the noise mitigation, all that. Do you think, and this is really a question for both of you, do you think the sheriff's department would be willing to enter in or at least put together an MOU with the city regarding what we would have as an expectation for security at the park?
What's that?
Like, is that hard off the table or
I
is that
don't know why we
something?
would need an MOU. I think it would be the same standard protocols of patrol anyways for the sheriff's office.
So usually when we execute MOUs, it really comes down to making sure that for a specific project or a specific purpose, we have outlined it in a way that it's easy for the public to go understand without having to necessarily have all the background information and have all of the understanding and education of being in government for a long period of time. And I feel like if we can include that in the total project, having that letter, you know, that memorandum of understanding of what we've agreed we're gonna do to ensure public safety at that park, I think it might make some people happy regarding us being able to provide funding for the project.
Yeah, so I would want to take that to Lieutenant Reniger, which we're actually coming up and we're actually meeting with Larry Hilberg tomorrow at Starbucks in the morning. So let me get with her. Let me figure out how that, I don't know if that's something that I've never heard of us doing an MOU on a specific park.
Right.
So let me just ask those questions. I don't want to give you any information that would be wrong or anything.
Well, if it's hard off the table, I just wanna,
Yeah, you have an existing contract. You can do a simple amendment to the existing contract if you want additional services or specific services.
Yeah.
That's up
Yeah,
to
would there
the
be a change in what service?
not necessarily, not
Because
necessarily,
and I'm having a hard time with this because I know that we have cameras up there.
right?
We're working right now. We've sent the emails to try to get the city count cameras onto our fusion system.
Mhm.
So every deputy has access to those.
Yes.
At the, just a touch of a button, they get that. So to me, the response and everything would be the same as any other place here in the city.
Right.
And I don't know what would be different on
It
that.
probably wouldn't. It would be more of a matter of articulating that in a way that's easy for people to understand and get comfortable with the project. That's really all it would
Do
be.
you want
Well, I think that like what Kevin's trying to say is too, is, again, that was the whole part of it when I pitched this thing too, is that we're gonna have a
Right.
camera system that's gonna be basically monitored. And again, that's where the camera system we have currently now is notifying our dispatch if we have some kind of situation. It's obviously an additional camera or something that's gonna be in that location, so it's just an additional area that we're gonna respond to. So as far as response goes, and again, I want to talk out of turn because I'm here as the nonprofit.
Right.
But it literally is the same, same kind of, service that we're providing. It's not gonna be enhanced just because of it.
Right.
But the only thing is if the camera does show, something that's happening in the skate park, obviously you have any kind of ordinance when it comes to graffiti or other things that are going on, falls under same umbrella when it comes to city codes, so that they can
Yeah.
enforce.
And this would also provide an opportunity to document, if we're lacking in ordinances that would help you guys with enforcement, that's something too that would typically be captured there and say that we have a responsibility as the city to follow up on those gaps in our own code
Okay.
so that we can provide that support back to the deputies. So it's a two-way conversation then memorialized in a letter, and you just attach it to the project and say, this is what we're doing to make this possible and make it good for everybody. It's kind of fluffy, I know, but sometimes it helps with the transparency for the lay folk that don't understand or pay attention to all the other intricacies that we're knee deep in all the time.
Okay, yeah, I'll definitely chat with her tomorrow and try to go over it. I mean, I've spoken up in front about the support of the skate park, is the fact that I'm a father who had a son that was into skating for a while, and I
Yeah.
had that same thought as a lot of the community. Man, I don't want a skate park in my community, until I actually sat out there and with the kids and watched what was going on during those skate parks.
Right.
And was there going, holy smokes, this is actually kind of cool. I've got adults actually skating with kids and kids helping younger kids they didn't even know. So, and I saw nothing during the time frame I was there. Now, just like any part of town, nighttime, off hours, you're always gonna have an element that comes in, but that's where you get the deputies that we take care of these streets. Colfax means a lot to us and all the guys and gals that work up here. So I'll talk to her tomorrow and see what I can't find out for you.
Did you have a question?
Well, I was just gonna say, I think my guess is your ultimate goal is to be able to have a document for the public that says this is not gonna put any additional stress
Yes.
on our services from our sheriffs. So
That's-
that's really what we're looking for, is just a document to be able to share with the public that says, you guys know what kind of work you're gonna have to put in it, and it's not gonna be any additional stressors on your crew, so.
It makes it so when someone asks me, what are you gonna do to keep the skate park safe? I can literally pull the letter and say, this is what we're gonna do. This is what we agreed to. This is what we discussed. And no, it might not be any different than anything else that we've ever agreed to before, but at least it's nicely consolidated in one location and it's easy to understand. I appreciate it. Let's see here. Did you have something, Kevin? I'm sorry, I'm hopping on the floor.
Go ahead, you can finish.
No, go ahead.
Okay, I'm the only one that's retired. All the other council members have jobs, so that gives me more free time to roam the streets. Pardon?
No.
Well, you have 3 children and you're a teacher. But what I'm getting at is I spend a lot of time, walking to coffee shops, and when I discuss this with a lot of people, they say if the roads were fixed, they'd be in favor of just anything, but in general. But so one of my questions to the city manager is, if we take a big chunk of 100,000, how much does that leave over for other projects?
Well, that would come out of the,
I mean, just in
Park and
general.
Recreation Fund 213, currently there's 196,775 in that fund. If we took 100,000, I would wipe out, or move out over half of what's in it.
Okay,
And then, I worked with staff, we went through and seen, just a cursory observance of what we could really need to work on as soon as possible, and that would be another $10,000+, which are the things that we have to fix.
okay.
That would have to come out of that, so it's not, still, it's-
Kim, if I can jump in on that real quick. So this is what Shauna sent me earlier today. The funds that we're pulling from the Parks and Rec funds, those are paid by mitigation fees, which is mean when we have new builds, a portion of those fees are what go into it. From looking at this, because I like numbers, a single family home, the portion of their fees, $5,700 goes into that Parks and Rec fee. So I went with 100,000 because it's the nice round numbers. Based on what they expect our growth, because they look at it as at 0.25% growth in additional housing every year. it would take us 6 years to recoup this $100,000 just based off of that, so.
My initial reaction was similar to Trinity's, finding another place. I was thinking of the SVCC as a way to avoid those prevailing wage.
Yeah, and
But it sounds like that
unfortunately,
wouldn't work if we moved it to the SVCC.
See, at the time that I was actually going to the SVCC, we did not have the Parks and Rec fees and all that stuff at the time. Obviously, I think if that would have moved forward back then, we probably would have it as a skate park by now, but you know, once we started incorporating those other, grants and stuff like that came in, it just kind of took that out of it.
and you know what's so sad about that, and I just need to call this out publicly. There's been such a high turnover on the direct residents around the Sierra Vista Center versus where it was when that whole study went,
Mhm.
went forward. And it's almost exclusively families with young children now who use that parking lot as the bike riding zone and the skate park already.
I mean, I had 50-50 people that hated my face and other people that really loved it, so it's.
Yeah, so I'm struggling with that. So I know I'm gonna bring up the uncomfortable thing in the room that comes up every single time we talk about skate park, and that's the pool. And I wanna make sure that we've clearly addressed that here today, that support of the skate park is not inherently anti-pool. The location where the pool was is no longer feasible for a pool, and that's why there's no pool there. And unless some geoscientist comes in here and says that every study we've ever had is wrong, which probably isn't gonna happen, there will never be a pool at that location ever again. But that does not mean there won't be a pool in Colfax ever again. And I would be willing to do a show of good faith tonight towards having a pool. That I'd motion that if we put any money towards the skate park tonight, that we put a chunk towards a feasibility study for a pool. And the vetting of a potential tax measure for a pool. And so that would be my proposal so that we can actually, show everybody that we are invested in hearing everybody. We do care about services that benefit everybody, and support of the skate park is not anti-pool. So that's the point I'd like to make.
And again, I've never been anti-pool either. I mean, I swam in the pool when I was a kid. So again, I know a pool would be great. I know we had a lot of conversations with the high schools trying to get a pool down there. Again, and then they, as city at one time asked me to do a pool study, and I worked with the county, how much it costs to run a pool. They're running in the red all the time,
Mhm.
and it's costing them over $200,000 just in maintenance. So, and again, that's where, again, they wanted to make sure. But again, I agree with you. I think, again, the city needs a pool. I mean, I think it'd be well supported. I challenge any people to go out there and start your own nonprofit and do a pool. Go for it. But other than that.
But if I'm being honest, you look at Dutch Flat, they have a special tax measure that funds them, their ability to have a pool, and yes, exactly. So that pool didn't just show up out of nowhere and not have some big chunk of money behind it. And, if we want that, we're gonna have to do the studies and do the homework to find out what it would take. So I'm not against us putting money into the skate park, and part of the reason that I'm not opposed to it is because, and I apologize for not having all the details, but the repeated history that I keep hearing from residents many times over the years has been that at some point, several organizations put forth the effort to raise money for a skate park, that this happened over and over and over again, and that at some point that money was entrusted to the city and disappeared. And I don't know, I'm just gonna be very clear, I don't know the history, but this is the story being told to me by the residents. And again, as a show of good faith, I'm willing to consider us putting money from the Parks and Recs Fund, because of the fact that it is restricted to parks and recreation activity, towards this project in an attempt to make amends for this history so that we can try to move forward in a positive direction and give something to these kids. So those would be my asks is, let's look at getting an MOU with the sheriff's department so that we're all on the same page and it's clear and transparent as day to everybody involved. Let's put some money towards pool feasibility study and towards a potential tax measure investigation. And then I'm supportive of putting money towards the skate park.
My question for you is, are you talking their full ask of 100,000 towards the skate park and then the additional money for a study on the pool? Or are we going to back down what you would give the skate park in order to have money to do your study? Because there's not a lot of money in that and it takes us a long time
Yeah.
to cover it.
No, I would agree. So my initial thoughts on it was I was proposing 75,000 to the skate park, 25,000 to pool feasibility. But then putting a $25,000 contingency towards skate park if it is needed. So therefore, we would still be seeking other funding opportunities and kind donations, et cetera. But that we'd be willing to entertain that additional 25,000 at a later date. So that was my thoughts. I'm definitely an open book to hearing what everyone else thinks, but they've taken up the floor more than enough, so.
All right, one last question about, two last questions. The maintenance, who pays for the maintenance?
We do.
The city. So that's, okay. And then my last question is, the way it's worked, and then if we like the design, we give the 100K, or if we have to give the 100K.
I mean, again, it's gonna have to be tweaked to meet a smaller, obviously, budget that we had. Again, when it comes to moving forward, that's gonna be purchased through the nonprofit, through Green Machine, when it comes to the engineer plans and the design concept, when it comes to it. Again, we're trying to, as far as the skate park in itself, when it comes to the people that we're really looking at are, like say Everline or Grindline are nationally known skate park designers. So when it comes to the design itself, they're creating something that's going to be unique to the area, nothing that's boring, and trying to stay within the current, kind of typical design that we have. It's not going to change too much, when it comes to the overall skate parks are pretty, simple or kind of similar, I guess, when it comes to it. But the only way that we can actually come to an actual agreement or design in itself is having the budget set for them to design off of.
So then the answer is the money goes first and then the design.
We would approve it, but the reality is the money wouldn't go anywhere or actually go to the project unless the project actually moves forward. If the project does not actually move forward, that money stays in the Park and Rec Fund. So while we would be allocating that money to it, it would continue to sit in our fund until the day that this project actually moves forward.
But just in general, I don't feel comfortable until I see the design. I mean, it's probably okay, but just as a general principle, I'd prefer to see the design first.
Are you supportive of them including that when they tell the designer how much they need to design based on?
Yeah, and I like your idea of 25 for the pool and 75 for the. Sean?
Comments for a while
No,
now.
good questions. I'm all in. I'd say I know what we need. I know what we need to do. The city's given lots of commitments and been trying to push this project forward for a long time. So I think we should just make it happen. And the money's there for park and rec fees. This is our big park and rec project that we've had hanging out there. I know I've gone to the county to help grease the skids to make sure we get those park and rec fees from the county too. I think we need to support the project and stop leaving it hanging like we have so many other things. I don't oppose putting the 25 grand toward pool study, but I say we still give the whole 100 grand and then do it. We don't have our maintenance on our current parks and things and is pretty low. We don't have any equipment that's going to need to be replaced really soon. Still enough money to add something to the park, some other equipment or something after that. And we know we're going to get money every year. And it's gonna be allocated for Parks and Rec. It does take a little while to build it back up, but I think our maintenance costs are low enough on what we currently have and what our future plans are for adding that it's not gonna hurt us too bad to take out that chunk of money and reallocate it.
Additional maintenance, we should still stay net neutral.
Yeah, and I think a little above, we'll definitely, seeing what we've spent in the past, even costs going up and all that, I think we still maintain a healthy enough balance that we can hit any emergency maintenance or any broken stuff that we need to fix so we can keep our parks looking good. So like I said, I'm all in. I'd really like to see us give the 100 grand right now and help ease some of Ty's worries. And it'll make it a lot easier when we go to the county too, and we request the additional funding, and then everybody knows it's handled. We can take away as little as possible from the design and give the community the best possible outcome with what we're faced with now.
Make sure you ask for public comment too.
Okay, do we have any public comment?
I think Carolyn. has comments.
Carolyn?
Now, Ron, if we handed out this $100,000 to him, and obviously it drops our account then, and now we're talking about, a little bit more for this feasibility study. Do you have any concerns about us running short and being able to take care of the equipment and the parks that we have right now with the fact that it's going to take so long to recover these funds?
Yeah, I haven't really been here long enough to tell you what, on an annual basis. And not to maintain it the way I'd like to see it maintained. So.
I appreciate the honesty.
I can't tell you. All I can tell you is I send them through, tell me what's broken now, and what's your best estimate of what it costs to fix what we have now.
With what's on your plate for the next 2 weeks, if we were to hold a vote for 2 weeks, would that give you time to dig into it a little bit further and be able to give us a solid answer, a more solid answer?
Yeah, I'm more than happy to investigate whatever you like, and there's not much on the next agenda at this point.
Okay, because Ty and I have talked a lot in the last 4 days, since I put on the agenda. And I just, for the record, I do have to clarify this wonderful letter that Ty wrote that has lots of information. It is also incorrect because I am part of that advisory committee and I was not included in any conversations until Friday. So I did not approve of this, agree to the 100,000, nothing. Because on here it says that the advisory committee fully supported it. And so for my own, put it on the record, that did not include me, even though I'm on the advisory committee. And when Ty and I spoke yesterday, my preference was that we put in the request today for it and we, have a bit of a conversation, but then we hold a vote till the following meeting, which is the 13th, which is still a week before the county meeting. So he would still have an answer in time for the county meeting.
We do have an issue though. I will not be at that meeting and it will be a skewed vote if I'm not there to vote on this.
Well, you can vote from DC. can't
And
you?
I will not be in DC.
Jail.
I will be out of state and I will be unavailable entirely. So unfortunately, I feel very strongly that if we're gonna have an answer before the county meeting, it's gonna have to be tonight.
And Mick, I'm assuming there's no other way she can vote.
I won't be,
Okay.
there's no way for me to be available,
I'm-
unfortunately.
You know the rules way better than I do. That's why I was asking him. So,
She cannot vote by proxy if that's what you're asking. And if she can't participate in the meeting, she can't vote.
Well, again, I understand that Carolyn's saying that we did meet with the ad hoc committee at State Starbucks at one time. We did discuss, when it came to the going for the park and rec fees. I did apologize to Carolyn and Sean when it came to it, yeah, with, my full-time job with what I'm dealing with all the different things that, trying to keep them up to date. But we did meet at Starbucks quite a while ago when Wes brought the issue to me, I came to the ad hoc committee and we did discuss, using those park and rec fees, but other than that, like I say.
Before we go to public comment, Carolyn, would it make you feel better if we approved only part of it tonight and then said at the next meeting in March, the last meeting in March, maybe brought up the second part of that funding or, if we reduce the burden, would that help you at least for now so we can be able to in good faith tell the county?
absolutely. I just think, with how long Ron has been here and, trying to get enough information to get a whole picture is how it's gonna,
Yeah.
Impact the entire community, which I know you guys have had a chance to dig into it way more
Right.
than I have, but I think I'm fine with doing a small portion of it now
Mhm.
and then waiting till the April meeting when you would be back. I would be open to that one, depending on what number we come up with there.
So do you want a public comment at all?
Yeah, well, my last comment was, I agree with you, Ty. I never thought that, this would happen.
Nor did I, Ken.
I feel like I'm driving down the street and I see a pretty girl hitchhiking. I let her in and her boyfriend just jumps in, comes out of the bushes You know, that's.
Where are you going out with this,
process.
Jim?
Well, I'm just,
Yeah.
I don't know if I need to call
No.
point of order right now or back on track.
public comment.
I don't know if, do we have a contract now with Grindline? And do we expect that to take
That's
place?
the other part of the approval is to go towards the redesign and moving, we're getting two proposals coming in, and once we do it, Carl's obviously gonna be involved directly with any kind of designs and stuff like that are coming in, so we make sure that we're connecting all the dots when it comes to it. But that obviously is another part of it that we move forward with our design. We have Brightline and Everline are the two that proposals.
And we expect that to take place 2 weeks?
Yeah,
3
so
weeks?
that's a big part of it, is just trying to find out where we're at, and I think with coming up in March with the county. That's when about 3 weeks we'll have an answer as far as, or being able to, at that point, selecting those people when it comes to the proposals, so.
So council will have an opportunity, in my opinion, to review. It's not even in contract yet, and Green Machine is the one paying for the design fees. So even if they go through and provide 100% design, council will still have an opportunity to review the plans, and if they don't like it, they don't have to fund the project, and the city's not out any money at that point. Is that accurate?
Well, then can I say one more thing? Why don't we do this then? Why don't we make the money contingent on approval of plans? And
Yeah,
do the
I
whole
like that approach.
100K now. And then we have the option, then at least we're putting it out there, showing the good faith to the county and letting them move forward with the design, knowing that they could possibly have that much money. And then we still have the option to remove it, and it's stated in our vote at least.
I think where Carolyn's discomfort came in is just not having a direct answer from staff on what our annual maintenance fees are. And so without having that, it would frankly look really bad to our community if we say, okay, here's 100,000. Oh, sorry, it's only gonna be 50, or it's only gonna be 75 later. And so I think I personally, just where the math kind of landed me, I was comfortable saying, hey, I'm good with 75 today, and then let's do our homework, and then maybe, you know, in a couple months or a month from now, whatever it is, even if it's at the plan check meeting, then commit that additional 25. But still be able to tell the county that we've already reserved that contingency, and we are planning to give a determination on that as well, so that they know that it is on the table. It just hasn't been committed yet. That was kind of my thoughts. That way, at least we're still showing like, you know, we're going through it.
We probably need to consider, you know, any idea what operation maintenance is on something like that.
Operation maintenance when it comes to like.
The skate park
just
itself.
Maintenance itself. So when I did a while back, when they asked me to do kind of a skate park and then pool study, when it came to the maintenance.
Yeah.
Significantly very low, because the only thing that really that they looked at, or any maintenance that they did, was, you know, maybe sealing the concrete there once in a while when
Sure.
it comes to weather, and then garbage. That was and then obviously if you have any kind of graffiti or anything like that, I mean, there'd be stuff that, but it's
Well,
hard miss when it comes to that
Yeah,
part.
the reason I ask, and clearly you're asking it somewhere else than I have, is I checked in the city that I work for, and the Parks and Rec department budget is 15,000 a year for operation maintenance and vandalism repair.
Yeah, and I think I can't remember off the top of my head. I don't want to give a number, but I know Grass Valley was, I think, significantly lower when it came to their
That's good.
overall maintenance. And then Auburn on theirs, they actually allow graffiti, so they don't really have to paint over
There you
stuff. So yeah.
Nice.
The,
And I know it sounds weird, but I'm actually all about throwing some chalk out there and letting those kids tear it up. I'm sure they do.
to rephrase the statement that I made that grew a few chuckles. Does everybody remember the year 2009 when the federal government took billions and billions and bailed out all these big companies? Well, I guess that's still fresh in my mind, and I just don't want us to get in a position where, you know, down the road, we find out that concrete is doubling in price because it's all going to Ukraine or whatever, and now we need another 100,000 because the project's too big to fail. So
Well,
that's what I was
If
worried
we
about.
keep putting this off, we could be in that
Well,
position.
that's the
again.
problem that we've been
So-
running into, Kim, is the fact that things are growing and maybe Robert can talk to that. So again, that's where we're kind of like trying to get things settled, getting out to the, the contract, redesign, getting that going. We could stay within a small window of opportunity. So I don't know if Robert, you want to talk about it.
Okay, public comment time?
Great, great to you, Ty. Well, it's a pleasure to see you all here, mayor, council members, staff. You know, I usually get to see you in a different context. Today I'm here for the day job. This is what I do for a living. So I'm the president and CEO of the California Construction and Industrial Materials Association. English translation, we represent all the people that dig rock, sand, and gravel out of the ground and turn it into things like asphalt and concrete. So it's already been thrown a bone, but I have to compliment my colleagues at Tykert, Dana Davis that runs Tykert's Materials Division, working with Crystal at Project Cornerstone, who brought the Tony Hawk Foundation in. They worked very diligently to get a substantive amount of the concrete donated for this project. So these funds that are being raised are for the things that require hard dollars, like labor. And so we've been trying to keep that partnership of donated materials for the project together, because as those of you that know that Tykert, other than screaming at them when they're working on the road, or something else that may happen on a major project on Highway 80, they're very community minded, the Tykert family. So Dana, I spoke to him on the way up, right? The biggest barrier for us is not having a finite project that's ready to go. And I'll share with you, when I first got involved in this, Dana was already well into it. Dana grabbed me because he knew I'm from Placer County. I grew up here. In 1963, we were a lot smaller county, but we've grown and a lot has changed. And as was already pointed out by the councilwoman, our demographics have changed. We are the largest, fastest growing county in the state for young people. So we're happy to be here to support the project, to support the application, because we want to go back to our industry knowing that there's a project that can move forward. I appreciate the dialogue you guys have had, right? I miss it a little bit from my planning commission days, but I appreciate the very thorough vetting. But again, a lot has changed. And to your point, Mr. Mayor, right, in 2021, we saw a 35% increase in the cost of construction materials as reported by the Engineering News Record. Then in 22, it was 20%. And we all went through all those inflationary times. We've seen them. So the sooner we have a full project that Ty can take to the engineers, and your city engineer working with folks that are specialists in skateboards gets back to you with that project, it gets the stamp of approval, it's fully funded, the sooner we can go back down to all of those, because they were donated from all over the state because they love this kind of project, right? Most of these companies are a lot like Tykert, right? They love these kind of projects. I just heard from somebody that knew I was going to be here tonight. They were at a groundbreaking somewhere in a smaller community, not dissimilar to Colfax up in Washington last week in an event, raising money for a project like this one, because what's this for? This is for the future. This is for the kids. Keep them out of trouble. You got great law enforcement, right? You get a little riffraff no matter what you're in, but at least we've got a place for our young people to stay productive and active. So I'm pleased to be here to support the request before you, pledging our support to go out and raise as much donated material as humanly possible. And again, it was a lion's share that we initially got donations or commitments to 3 years ago. So with that, I look forward to also seeing you all next weekend, right, at the crab feed, because I also support this project personally. Happy to spend my hard-earned nickels on the 4th of July and at the annual Big Green Crab Feed. So thank you.
There's a lot of crab feed tickets left. If I see you're not at the crab feed, we will have problems.
I got
Buy
a
your
party at
tickets?
10 coming. I got a party at 10 coming.
Any other public comment?
Good evening, Nick. Canyon Way, Colfax. 9 years is a long time to be planning this
and I'm sure you've seen a lot of different city council faces as well, and I'm sure, and I'm aware that that's pretty difficult for someone to go through, and 9 years, that's dedication, man. We need a skate park here in Colfax. These kids, I've had a lot of family member go through these schools and still have a lot in it, and there's nothing for them to do after school during the summer, I mean, you got the rivers and everything, but skate park would be awesome for the community, for the kids. I'm sure there's a lot more kids here now. It seems like it to me. I see them everywhere. But I'm in full support of skate park and the pool, We need both. It would be awesome. And I don't, want to get too old to where I won't use the skate park. I'd probably use it right now. But yeah, I think
Still do it.
I don't think you need to do any more surveys to see how well a skate park would do or how, I think it would benefit Colfax.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comment?
So I'm just wondering, I realize Sierra Vista Community Center has some reservations on that, but with the Bianchini Fund, is there any way to get funding through that program, being that you do work with the city? And also, if there was funding with the Bianchini Fund, I believe that would be with a nonprofit, and that would help us with the labor costs and other permitting and licensing.
So Tim, I'm being cryptic about some of what I was asking earlier out of respect to people who are not here tonight to speak to some of my ideas. But I think there are a couple more conversations we need to have just to see if all resources have been tapped. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, I
But
think
I'm all
so.
for let's make this happen ASAP.
I like that, and I like moving forward, and so you will still have an option to either approve or disapprove. My other thought was, being that you're going to be basically negotiating with the county and giving them information that we have now, to see how much more they would be able to put into this project. And by that, I mean, okay, look, if the city's going to put in $50,000, can you bump in and match that again and negotiate with them? I would just like to see maybe a little more negotiating, so it doesn't have to come out of the Parks and Rec funding. But I mean, I'm totally for it. But I just think some of these things need to be questioned and looked at before any definite, which is what I understand you guys will do anyway. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments?
Ty, I have a question real quick. Did you guys ever, well, I know, did you approach the Bianchini Trust for funds? Because it's
No,
available
because-
for kids.
And again, that's one thing that I never approached it. Being,
Okay.
yeah, it was a
That's
while
a
ago.
spicy
when I approached it.
conversation.
Yeah, it was a while ago, but, and then to Tim's, again, Andy Fisher has reached out to me. Again, that's an amount that they are looking at. I mean, they've already given $75,000. They're going to look at giving an additional $130,000. That's $205,000 from the county into a city project. And so that was the amount that they're kind of hoping for to go, because he looked at what they have in their current account, not exhausting it, like we're trying not to exhaust this one. And that was the amount that they came up with. So as far as negotiation goes, I think that's kind of the number that they're stuck with. So, I'm sorry, we're taking so much of everyone's time.
Yeah.
Kevin, Bob.
Well, this is what we came here for.
Yeah, that's why we get paid the big bucks.
I'm concerned about your value of money.
Yeah, it's just a big bucks. What's this?
Yeah, any other public comment?
Oh, that's for,
Yeah, just on this subject, you're good.
yeah.
Looks like
We
that's
have
it.
another public comment coming up.
It's just the skate park public comment.
Yeah. Anybody on Zoom?
So-
No, okay. Well, it looks like it's in a public comment. I want to make one quick comment to my fellow council members here and to Ty. I like the idea of a skate park. I mean, helping the kids. I mean, I just have trouble with giving $800,000 that'll benefit 1/2 of 1/4 of 1% of the population. I mean, that's a slight exaggeration, but that's what I'm
Well,
looking for. So I got to
that's
exaggerate now.
$800,000 primarily raised by the children. Well, out of the total amounts, yeah, looking at the donations and in kind, most of that was secured by people that care about these kids.
Yeah.
So, you know, a lot of this was raised specifically through them showing up to meetings and putting in the work. So you got to give some credit where it's due. You don't get a project if you don't put in the work and you don't ask for the money.
I work, I just don't get paid for it.
Well,
No, I would like to see $800,000 go to a fleet of drones and then 4th of July, no fireworks, we have drones.
Yeah.
Well, do we have any other comment by the council or the staff? Or
I just want to point out one more time, the county is going to give more than double what we're being asked to put into this for
Yeah.
our park inside the city.
yeah.
And the county, I'm sure will be willing in the future to help us out with other projects and things too. So it's not like it's
Yeah.
gonna be a one-off, and they are committing to investing a significant portion of the funding for this project to help out the city. So I'd really like to see us going for it and giving it our all to show that we're backing this project 100%.
So I've got a proposal I'd like to put on the table. Here's what it is. I'd like to adopt the resolution so we can review and approve designs. Ensuring alignment with the budget. I'd like to allocate tonight a firm 75,000 towards the skate park project with another 25 for consideration at plan check. And then I would like us to allocate tonight 25,000 as a good faith effort towards a feasibility study and potential tax measure for the pool. That's my proposal.
do I hear a second to that proposal?
Can we make it a bond measure instead of a tax measure?
We can look at all the options, but basically I'd like to put the money towards the feasibility study. That I'd like to allocate the money towards doing feasibility.
I don't know anything about the cost of feasibility studies, but is 25,000 gonna cover that?
It's a start. It might.
If not, Trinity will
Well-
come back with another amendment.
And if by some miracle, we don't have to spend 25,000 on that, we can roll it into the project. But at least we can say that we have kicked off and started an effort that has not kicked off or started so far. So
Okay.
that's my proposal.
Well, to see attorney likes that,
It's legal.
it's legal. He doesn't like it, but it's legal.
No, that's his job.
I think everybody needs to understand exactly what you're proposing. 75,000 allocated to this project tonight,
Yes.
25,000 to be considered upon plan review, plus $25,000 for a feasibility study for a pool. Is that right?
That is correct.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry,
Aye.
Mayor, can I roll call this one just to clarify that we have somebody abstaining from the item?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Councilmember Burris.
Aye.
And Hilberg is abstaining from the item. McCauley?
Can you come back to me?
Absolutely. Loman?
Aye.
Mayor Douglas
Aye.
and Councilmember McCauley.
Don't matter. I
Feel your pressure.
No, again, I can't, again, as far as everything goes, I mean, I really do appreciate it. I think, again, I just really want to put on record what the Green Machine has been with, outstanding within this whole project, sticking with me and everyone that's supporting it. So I do really do appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Ty, and thank you, Andrea and Green Machine, for all your work.
Get the shoe.
Okay, now we move on to item,
Can we take a brief recess?
we're going to take a brief recess.
Moment, this was a long conversation.
It's the official way to resume. We're now resuming the city council meeting.
Calling it back to order, calling the regular session back.
Calling the regular session back to order. Order in the court. I'll get Judge Judy in here.
All right, everybody, we're getting started. If everybody could please take your seats.
Okay, item 5B, the rate study. Does the city manager want to give a review on the rate study?
No, Captain Hanson is gonna give that. Hanford is gonna give that.
Okay. You're on.
Good evening. My name's Catherine Hansford. I'm with Hansford Economic Consulting. And last year, the city put out an RFP to have another wastewater rate study conducted. It's a 5-year update, and that's very typical for cities. And I was fortunate to win that job. So I'm going to present the findings tonight. We're looking for input on the study and direction moving forward. So the purpose of a rate study, first and foremost, we're looking to ensure that you have sufficient revenues to operate the wastewater system. And we're looking out at a 5-year period, ensuring that the city can dispose of wastewater safely while meeting all of its regulatory requirements for all of the residents and businesses in Colfax. Second of all, to fund the CIP, that's called the Capital Improvements Plan, ensuring that you're able to complete all the projects that are necessary and known for the next 5 years. Also, to ensure that you have adequate reserves, you need to make sure that there's sufficient cash flow in the fund. And especially right now, because the city is undergoing some major projects, and it does have grant funding for those projects, but the way they work is that the city has to outlay all that money up front, and then the state reimburses. And the state just depends on how things are going for them, but it can take, 2 months would be good turnaround for them to reimburse you, but I have seen 9 months. So, and given that these projects are in the millions of dollars, you need to ensure you have the cash flow to be able to pay the contractors and not have to go out for any kind of short-term loan. Also, I'll mention to make sure you keep enough funds for emergencies. 2 nights ago, I was giving a public workshop in Grizzly Flats where they were affected by the Caldor fire, and 2/3 of their community burnt down. FEMA and there are other sources of funding for replacing infrastructure, but there's no source of funding for replacing lost revenues from rates during that time period. So they depleted all of their reserves, and they're now having to go through a rate increase because they don't have that money available anymore. So wildfire is a concern. And then finally, to fulfill financial agreement obligations. So the city does have an SRF loan in place that paid for the wastewater treatment plant improvements a few years ago. That loan comes with some requirements. There's some restricted cash reserve requirements and a debt service coverage requirement as well. Just to explain a little bit here that the rate study supports the enterprise fund. So the city has a separate fund for wastewater, and I apologize. I noticed now this slide says water. I'm sorry, should say wastewater. But your operating expenses are primarily funded by the wastewater rates. So that's what customers pay monthly. And then the capital expenses are primarily funded by a combination of rates and connection fees. But a utility enterprise fund is intended to pay for itself. It's considered rather like a business type of fund. It needs to support itself and not be supported by the general fund. The rate setting process, I already mentioned, this typically happens every 5 years. We start with a review of the rates. How are they, how's that rate level supporting your existing costs? How much do you have in reserve right now? So that's the first thing. Second step is determining the revenue requirement. And that refers to the amount of money you need to raise through the rates. Then we look at the rate structure. That's okay. And then calculate the rates. And the final step then is implementing rates. In setting rates, there are multiple objectives. So we're trying to juggle several things at once here. First and foremost is revenue sufficiency. But we also are trying to support city goals. We want to keep a rate structure that is simple and logical, that is compatible with utility billing, doesn't create administrative burden for the staff, and that signals the value of service that is being received by the customers. And of course, we have some legal requirements too. Utility fees, specifically water, sewer, and actually garbage, are what we call property-related fees. And property-related fees are subject to Proposition 218's requirements. So there are 5 requirements that we need to demonstrate we're meeting in this rate study. First of all, the revenues from the fee shall not exceed the funds required to provide the service. Revenues from the fee shall not be used for any purpose other than that for which it is imposed. The amount of the fee imposed as an incident of property ownership shall not exceed the proportional cost of service to the parcel. This third one is the one that usually receives the most scrutiny. And it's important for you to know that we're not looking at cost of service and proportionality to every single individual parcel. Case law has demonstrated that we can be looking at customers as groups. So we look as the customer base here. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that, but it's just important for you to know that it is not an individual parcel by parcel type of analysis. Fourth, no fee may be imposed for service unless the service is used or is immediately available to the parcel. So you can't be imposing these fees on undeveloped lots on the outskirts of the city, for example, that cannot connect now. And finally, the fee cannot be imposed for general governmental services where the service is available to the public at large. And that's usually not so much of an issue. Okay. There are some major assumptions that are detailed at the beginning of the report. First of all, there is no change that is proposed to the rate structure itself. The EDU structure, which is what the city uses, it's called an equivalent dwelling unit structure. This is an appropriate structure for a city of this size. And it is typical of smaller systems with no industrial customers and when the customers have similar wastewater strength. So all the customers who have paid connection fees pay per EDU as the system is ready to receive their wastewater flow. And I have a little bit more description about that in the next slide. Second of all, that growth continues with the historical trend it has seen, and that would mean an additional 3 EDUs each year. Third, the potential Shady Glen consolidation is considered in the rate study. There is a grant-funded feasibility that could happen, could be approved this year. And I do want to just mention that I did make one error in the write-up for this report. It was my understanding that feasibility study had already started. In fact, it hasn't. So it would potentially start more towards the end of this year. It doesn't actually affect the rate calculations, but I will make sure that that gets updated in the next version of the report. And then you should also know that the way the state works is they give you the grant funding for the feasibility study. If it turns out that it is feasible to do consolidation. You will go through many more hoops with LAFCO and the state, and they will require that you demonstrate financial feasibility. So you would be required anyway to do another rate study if the decision is to move forward with construction of that project. And finally, the last major assumption is that there is no new debt issued for the wastewater fund. So I was going to just take a moment here, talk a little bit about an EDU fee structure. First of all, the EDU structure has been used by the city for some time, and it is defined in the city's ordinance as the average wastewater discharge from a single-family dwelling. So one EDU is considered to generate domestic wastewater carrying minimal to moderate load of non-hazardous contaminants such as common household cleaning and maintenance products. And that's why I said before, if you have no industrial strength customers in your city, then it's an appropriate rate structure to use. A few years ago, the state had some guidelines for rate studies, and that was one of the major considerations that they said, if you were considering some different types of rate structures, as long as you don't have any large industrial customers, you might have an industrial customer if they are required to put in its own sort of trap system. Ron can probably elaborate more on that, but you could, and they reduce their strength of wastewater to a more common household type strength, then that's also acceptable. EDUs are assigned by the city at the time of application for service, depending on the intended uses of the property. And that the number of EDUs that a customer has is reviewed upon change in building use and/or application for building alterations. So the customer base here in the city of Colfax, in terms of how much wastewater flow is generated, is 70% from residential customers, about 20% from commercial, and about 10% from institutional customers. So you are primarily a residential base. So the second step I had mentioned is this revenue requirement. So this is looking at the projection of the costs for the next 5 years for this wastewater fund. The first grouping of costs is for operations and maintenance. How much does it cost to staff, insure, power bills, supplies, chemicals, all the kinds of regular running of the wastewater system. Second is capital improvements. Third is system rehabilitation. And system rehabilitation really becomes very important in your rate study, and I'll explain that. I have 3 different alternatives, and they really center around system rehabilitation. So how much money do you want to collect today for future repairs that you anticipate happening? Then debt service and reserves. Looking a little bit at the breakdown of just your operating expenses, almost half of the costs are for personnel. That's very typical for a utility fund. You have very specialized personnel that operate the wastewater system. And so personnel costs usually do take up a large portion of operating costs. There are supplies and equipment costs, some contract services, that'll be for engineering types of studies, and a few other less significant costs. The rate study was conducted using 3 financial health criteria for the fund. And this is based on guidelines that are provided by the Government Finance Officers Association. First, to maintain general operating cash reserves at least 75% of operating expenses. That's to ensure that you have sufficient money to get through your cash flow needs, and have a little in reserve in case something comes up. Second, to have a minimum of $950,000 in restricted and designated reserves. First of all, the city has a requirement by the state to keep $439,000 in a restricted account. So as long as you have the loan, you must keep that money in a restricted account. You can't touch it. When your loan is repaid, you will actually use that for your last payment, and then you're released from that obligation. And another $500,000 for capital expenses. So you need to be prepared for if there's an emergency, for example, and you need to fix something. And then finally, that each year the net operating income will exceed the debt service by at least 1.25%. So that's debt service coverage requirement by SRF, and a little bit more because if you ever needed to go out for any kind of bonding, you would have to demonstrate you have a 1.25 debt service coverage. Okay. So I mentioned that there are 3 different fee levels that were analyzed in this rate study. And it comes down to the system rehabilitation need. So first of all, alternative 1 would be to continue to fund the system rehabilitation at 15% of depreciation each year. So depreciation is how much your assets, so you have a value for your asset, and each year that value is reduced. And that depreciation amount is used as kind of a proxy for how much you're going to need to spend on system rehabilitation. So if you were to keep up what you're currently putting aside in your rates for system rehabilitation, your rates would need to increase at 5.75% each year. The effect of that is that you would have additional funds for future repairs accumulating over the next 5 years of about $650,000. The second alternative is that you stop putting aside money for system rehabilitation, reasoning being that you have sufficient cash reserves in the account. And in that case, rates would need to increase at 4% each year. So the effect is you do not accumulate additional cash for future repairs, but you maintain the health of your wastewater fund as it is today. And alternative 3 is that you're not fully funding your revenue requirement with rates each year. And because of that, cash reserves need to be used to pay for a portion of the capital project costs. If you did that, rates could increase at 2% each year, but you would be drawing down on your cash reserves in the 5-year period of about $155,000, assuming that the cost estimates are good. So I've presented the next few slides at the alternative 1 level, but then at the end, I do summarize and show you the effects to the rates at each of the different alternative levels. In this graph, we'll stay on that one. In this graph, the orange bars show the revenue requirement, and then the gray bars show the rates revenue that would be raised through the increase in the rates. So you can see in each year, some years, the rates would raise about the amount of the revenue requirement. In some years, it's a little more. In some years, it's a little less. So over the whole 5-year period, there would be an increased accumulation for future repairs. So this chart shows the increase per EDU, and one single family home has 1 EDU from the current fee of $143.07 per month. That would increase to $151 in the first year and then up to $189 by the end of the 5-year period. At that level of funding, the city would expect, as I've already explained, it would expect your cash balances to increase for that money that you anticipate having to spend in the future. But what I really want to point out in this graph is more on the left-hand side of the graph. It's fiscal years 2024 and 2025. What's happening right now is that the city is using its money to pay for these grant projects. And it's been drawing down on reserves because the state is not reimbursing you very quickly right now. So, so by the end of 2025, you could be down to having about $2 million in this fund. We go to the next slide. I think it's on the next one. I think this illustrates it. You can see the historical cash balance. So 2021 through 2024, 24 obviously is projected. But you can see here this drop. So going from $4 million in the fund down to around $2 million by the end of 2025 because of this drawdown to conduct these big projects you have going on right now. And I think it's the next graph that shows. So this blue line here, the blue line shows what the cash balance is at the beginning of fiscal year 2024. So that's a very good position. You're at about $4 million in the fund. By the end of 2025, that could be down to, is projected to be down at about $2 million. The black line shows a minimum target reserve, but a minimum implies, you know, that's you really want to be above that. And then the different gray bars show the projection of the cash balances each year at the different alternatives. So alternative one is that darker color. So there you can see by the end of the period, you would have more in cash balance than you did at the beginning of fiscal year 2024, excuse me. At alternative two, you'd potentially be a little bit above. Alternative three, that's where you're drawing down on your cash because the rates are increasing at 2%, and that's not sufficient to pay for the revenue requirement. Okay. And this graph is a summary of the wastewater rates under each of these different fee levels. The current rate, again, is $143.07 a month. And so you can see here by the end of fiscal year 2029, at alternative one, the rate is up at $189.22. At alternative two, it's $174.06. And alternative three, which is the lowest rate increase, it's $157.97. So I'm often asked this question, is this reasonable? And it's a very difficult question to answer because everybody's community has a different perception of what is reasonable. So one way to look at this is to see what other communities are paying for their wastewater, recognizing that every community has its own unique challenges, different geography, different requirements by the state. Are they disposing to a water source? Are they disposing to land, for example? However, if you kind of put that aside and just said, well, what are other people paying? I looked first of all at regional comparisons, and then I looked at cities of about the same size. And this graph shows Colfax currently at the $143 level is about in the middle of these comparisons. The highest rates are Cascade Shores, Lake of the Pines, and Lake Wildwood is higher than Colfax right now. So they are in Nevada County, but they're in regional proximity to the city. Donna Summit, they have a lot of challenges and a very, very small customer base, so they have a very high rate. But looking at cities of very similar size, Del Mar, Belvedere, Sutter Creek, I'm not familiar with these cities and the types of systems they have, but they're a little bit more expensive than Colfax. And then others sort of in a similar range, Arnold, which is also a foothill community, Portola Valley, I forget where that is. But just to give you an idea, okay?
And just really quickly for the public's education on what we're looking at here. Some of those systems were recently required to do the same mitigations we were required to do back in 2008, and they have a larger spread of customer base. At the time we were required to do our mitigations, the cost of doing those mitigations was far lower than it is now. Some of those other cities that we saw in that chart with the lower rates, such as Tahoe City, have not been required to do those mitigations yet. So they're going to have a really unfun time when that day comes. Same with Nevada City. So these numbers are hard to swallow, and they're gonna get harder to swallow for some of these folks.
And then if I may add, City of Sutter Creek also has a JPA that you have to pay into because they don't treat the sewer, they just collect it. So that's an additional fee that's not on here. It's probably $35, $40 somewhere in there a month as well.
Yes, and that graph is very much a snapshot in time. Depends where you are on your review of your permit with the state, which is every 5 years. So it's not great in a sense, but I just thought it might be helpful.
I want to compliment this because this is incredibly helpful, and adding that additional context, I just want folks to understand, because when you look at, for example, Tahoe City, I think that a lot of people, the first thought is, how do we pay less? How do they pay less than us? They're Tahoe. And that's where I think the context comes in that, yeah, they are Tahoe, and reality hasn't come to bite Tahoe yet, so that's just one of those things that we need to remember, is that while we had our bad luck moment, in a way, we were lucky to have had to address this at a time where the economy was much cheaper. So Sean's mic, your mic's not on, but what he was
Sorry.
trying to say is we have a 0.5 megawatt solar field out at the plant that is not yet authorized to operate. And once it comes online, the original cost saving projection a couple years ago was 200,000. As you can tell, rates just got hiked crazy. So with that, the cost saving projection is much higher. So hopefully that'll play into the determination in future rates.
Yeah. Okay, I just have a few more slides and then we can discuss. So I just want to inform everybody about the next steps for rate adoption. This shows the steps and the timeline. So today we are February 28th. We're looking for council input on these fee level alternatives. I will take your input. I will revise the report and come back to you March 27th with that draft final. And that is a very important meeting because that is when council would have to give direction on moving forward with sending out notices to the customer base. So this is another requirement of Proposition 218, what we call it the 218 notice, is that every single record owner, that means someone who owns a parcel that receives service from you, must receive notice of this proposal to increase rates. And they have to have, you have to have at least a 45-day period of time from the day that those notices are mailed until you hold your public hearings. It's got to be at least 45 days in there. And if you set the date, if you mailed by April the 5th, then your public hearing date would be June 13th. And also, I'm asking for some thoughts today and definite direction by March 27th on whether you want to have any kind of public workshop. If you feel that this forum is sufficient and that there is adequate notice for people to come, or if you want to hold a singular purpose type meeting to address rates. We can certainly do that sometime in May. And then the public hearing is held and your new rates will be effective July 1, which coincides with the fiscal year. Okay. All right. Customers need to understand they have a right to protest this procedure. So every property owner has the right to protest, but only one protest per parcel can be counted. So for example, if you have a tenant at a property and a property owner, and both were to send in a protest, legally the city can only count one of those protests. In addition, a protest must be mailed or physically submitted in handwriting to the city. It cannot be typed and it cannot be submitted electronically. In addition to that, in order to be valid, the protest must include these 4 pieces of information, and this will be included on the Proposition 218 notice. Has to have your customer name, the address, or the parcel number of the property. A statement that you are protesting the wastewater rates, must have your signature and the date. Upon close of the public hearing, the protests are counted. And if more than 50% of the owners of record protest, then the city cannot proceed. If you don't have a majority protest, the city can proceed with adoption of maximum rates. And it's super, super important for everybody to know that the rates that are included in the 218 notice are exactly that. They are maximum rates. So when you adopt a rate schedule, what you're saying is we can only go up to this level, but if we review the budget every year and see where we're at, and if we're getting good savings from our solar generation, and if we're receiving our reimbursements faster and we're doing really well on the cost side, you can freeze and even reduce your rates in that 5-year time frame. And then just finally, to make everyone aware, because this is quite new, as of January 1, 2022, California has now provided a 120-day statute of limitation for ratepayers to challenge increased rates. So that would have to be filed within 120 days upon, I think it would be approval of the resolution adopting the wastewater rates. So, yeah.
Thank you. Do we have a discussion by the council?
I'd like to ask a couple things. That was beautifully done, by the way. You speak beautifully. We set a 5-year plan, correct?
Yes.
And my recollection, I have not been on the council, but it seemed to me that every year it seems to go up a consistent %. And I'm wondering if there are yearly reviews of this that I'm just not aware of? Or do we set that in concrete for a 5-year period without an opportunity to change it?
So you always have the opportunity to change it.
Okay.
The rates that are set by the resolution are the maximum rates. So like I said, if you're finding cost efficiencies, or perhaps you're delaying projects for a certain reason, you don't need that money when you thought you needed it, you have the ability to freeze the rates, but you would really only want to do this on a yearly basis. And I think you would tie it in with your budget process and see what makes sense.
So I wouldn't expect it any more than annually. Are you saying that we arbitrarily and automatically set it at the maximum ahead of time and can reduce it later? Is that what you just said?
Yes, the adopting resolution adopts the maximum rates, but you have the ability each year. You could keep it at the rate it was just at that last year if you have sufficient revenues.
Okay, another question is, I think you arbitrarily have chosen, or somebody chose 5 3/4% or 4% or 2%. And 4% was enough to maintain our reserves. 2% was not. And I'm wondering, what about 3%? We don't have to choose from these alternatives, I don't think, do we? Can we say 3% because it's enough? Is that an opportunity open to us?
Yes, so you actually have a few options.
Mhm.
One is you could say the 4% and put that in the notice and then actually adopt a 3% when you get to the public hearing. You can do that. Another option is in the notice, you could put a couple of options in there. Just say that we are considering these different options. Here's the maximum rates and here's an alternative set of rates. So the customers understand you're not locked into that one set of rates. That's another option. But it is important to know that you don't want to undercut yourself in your notice in the sense that if you put 3% in the notice and then you got to the public hearing, you couldn't then go with the 4%. You have to go with what was in the notice. You
It's a
couldn't-
not to
but you
exceed.
Go lower.
Okay, that's what I was curious about. Okay, so we don't have to arbitrarily choose among these alternatives. We can choose anything.
That's true.
And then I have one more question that it might make people uneasy. But when we show personnel costs, I'm aware that that does not include only the people that work at the sewer plant, but it includes percentages of other salaries that were determined at some point in time. I don't know what they are, but as a council person, I don't want to know how much individual people earn, but I would like to know what percentage of people's salaries are assigned to the sewer fund rather than general funds to help us make our decision. Okay. Okay, so it's not changeable. I'm just curious what it is because it would help me make this decision. Yeah. Okay, yeah, because that's what I'm interested in. I assume they're reasonable numbers and justifiable numbers, but I don't know that because I don't know what they are. And that's all.
Just on the 3 rate options. I know we don't want to go shooting ourselves in the foot and going too high, but, or going too low, but, I can't see raising rates at that maximum. And honestly, I think our options are pretty good and going low because we have the future cost reductions coming in soon that aren't included in this study. And, I think our general fund and our reserves are pretty strong right now too. So even missing out over the 5 years, even if we had something catastrophic happen, I think we could still cover that with the money we've already collected, for the most part. So I'd like to see us stay as low as possible, or even go lower.
Yeah, that's kind of my
Yeah.
thinking too. Like I'd like to see alternatives 4, 3, and 2, for example. And 2, I'm a little nervous about not maintaining reserves. I think that's something we need to do.
So kind of my thoughts on this are, again, in a catastrophic scenario, I don't want us to be precluded from taking extreme measures that might need to be taken, but I also, again, don't want to lock us into something ridiculous that we don't need to be paying, especially when we've stayed ahead of depreciation for so long. I do think that we have a lot of opportunity to stay at 2% or less once we get the other numbers in line. And that, again, is an annual decision. I really like the idea of including on the notice the additional context of saying that, you know, we are asking for this to be the not to exceed limitation, but that our target range for annual approval is this, with a consideration down to this if these conditions are met. If that is the level of context we can include, I think that's where I would like to be supportive, but I would be very hesitant to reduce the not to exceed number, just because of the fact that we have a long history as a city of wanting to do the right thing and then having it not go as planned. And our roads are a testament to that. So in an attempt to have us not repeat history, that's where I'd like to be really cautious and conservative with the not to exceed number.
Well, I have a question and I don't know if you can answer it or if Ron, you might be able to. One of the things it says in here is that if we get to a point with, because what we were charging for fees, we have at least 9 months of operating expenses on hand. So we've paid enough and there's over 9 months sitting there. So it says when cash exceeds what is necessary to maintain at least 9 months of operating expenses, it is then transferred out to other unrestricted and designated funds that support capital expenditures of the wastewater fund. How often does that happen? Have we had that? Have we hit that point? Does that never happen?
I think that might be a finance question.
I was just curious because it was in here, so so my question is, okay, are we consistently hitting this excessive 9 months? Because if so, then we probably need to, not using that higher number. Is that ever happened, never happened? Not in your time, okay, so non-existent pretty much.
Yeah.
Okay.
What I can tell you is in the short time I've been here, I have walked through the treatment plant multiple times and been to the lift stations. You have no spare part inventory. You have a lot of equipment that's outdated that you can't buy anymore. I mean, they're buying them out of open boxes to keep the place running. And a lot of work to be done. That doesn't mean you have to skyrocket the rates so they're completely unaffordable. But you should, in my opinion, pick a rate and then reevaluate every year whether you need that or not, so you don't have to come back and ask for more. Because you don't want to get stuck somewhere, or you don't want to be robbing your general fund, borrowing money from your general fund to keep your wastewater treatment plant going either. And, it doesn't take much of a failure, especially where our lift stations are, that you can generate some pretty large fines. Some of this stuff ever hits a creek that escapes out of a failing system. So there's a lot of work to be done out there and a lot of more evaluation to be done. So I would highly recommend you give yourself some room to evaluate on an annual basis when you're doing your budget, what we need and and what we can get by without.
I will say, I do feel like 100% certainty. I think we need the public workshop. I don't feel like there's any way, shape or form we can get around that. And we need to do everything we can as council to try to rev up attendance for that so we can have that educational session. This is a lot to take in, I think, especially for folks that don't have to read and learn the language and the nomenclature every single day. And so we really do need a dedicated couple-hour session to just sit down and nerd out.
And Ron, I had asked you that they have this projected wastewater system, actual expenditures on the improvements, and you had gone through this and said all the improvements that you think need to happen because of some of our older equipment are covered in these numbers that they put in.
Yeah, I asked them to
You're good
list,
with
I
this.
asked them to list everything that they thought they needed and they were comfortable with the caveat that if you don't get it now, you'll wait 5 years.
Right. Okay, so I just wanted to clarify that you looked at it. Remember, you guys got to remember that Ron is a wastewater expert over here. He knows what he's talking about on
So,
this one.
yeah, to clarify, I have 25 years of wastewater experience. I hold a grade 5 wastewater treatment license. And I've operated a class 4 wastewater treatment plant for operation and maintenance.
He's a good one to have on the team for this.
Okay.
Actually, that
It
does
is.
cut costs very significantly because one of the things that a lot of people don't know is as it stands today, when we have a vacation or an otherwise an absence of our main sewer plant treatment operator, we have to contract that out, which is ungodly expensive. So having an actual licensed city manager capable of operating that plant is a huge, huge deal to a city like ours.
Yeah, we're required to have a chief plant operator.
So we love you, Ron.
Time.
Please don't leave us.
So if Barnes is gone, we don't have to hire out now. I can act as chief plant operator and submit reports and things like that.
I'm with Larry. I would like to see what the 3% looks like. I like the middle ground. I don't want to touch the high ground whatsoever.
3%.
So.
Okay, so I think first we do public comment.
I'd like to
Public
I
comment.
have one more question still. Under financial health criteria, item 1, it says maintain general operating cash reserves at least 75% of operating expenses. Across what time period? How do you actually measure that? Is that monthly or yearly or decade or?
Yeah, no, so good question. So for that 1 year, you want to maintain at least 75% is 9 months worth
Right.
of operating costs. And
Of a year,
Of a year.
75% of a year.
Of a
Okay,
year.
that's the answer. Thank you.
Okay, public comment time.
I'm not part of the financial side of the city, but I do want to make sure that the city considers the current projects that are ongoing. So the solar project is pretty much wrapped up. The I&I project, which we've seen the reimbursement issues and getting reimbursed for the construction work that's taking place. That's about 70%. And the algae project, which is about to get kicked off tomorrow, that's going to be about 2 years. So it's going to be stretched out more than the I&I project is, but we do want to consider that with our cash flow. The CDBG project, which is on the agenda tonight, that's going to get started. That's going to be about a 3-month turnaround. And that's also reimbursed. So we'll have the same reimbursement issues over the next couple of months, depending on when we adopt this.
So if I may, on the algae project, we know what we know and we don't know what we don't know. So once you start that project, it's like remodeling a house in the bathroom. You tear up one floorboard, next thing you know, you're doing a complete remodel. So, keep that in mind when you're thinking about funding.
At least for the next year.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's a fresh, hard reality right now for me. So that's definitely where my mindset's coming in with this is, prepare for the worst and operate based on reality on an annual basis. That's kind of exactly, that's really where I'm leaning with this.
Okay, any other public comment?
Okay.
Okay, so it sounds like we're not going to vote on one of the percentages. We're going to vote to have a workshop.
Yeah, you'll need to let Catherine know how you want to proceed.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's where I'm not sure we're on the same page, but what I'm at least leaning towards is that we ask her to notice for option 1 with the additional information and context that I had spoken to, where we have a target, annual target that's lower than the total not to exceed that we would be asking the ratepayers for, with the option to go lower based on operating.
Can we keep it at option 2 and then move that target down from there?
I don't think I'd feel comfortable because that doesn't give us any opportunity to plan for depreciation. I feel like we need that depreciation amount in there. We could target for option 2.
Well,
Yeah,
so
'cause
I
I
think
think
that
our-
we're saying if the paperwork if the notice says that this would be the max that we're considering, but we absolutely have lower, spots we can hit. So
Yeah,
it's not
yeah,
saying
you will
this is
say
what we
that
want.
you'll, for
This is the
instance, if-
maximum that we would be.
Yeah.
looking
I just don't want to max out at 4%. That's
Yeah.
because if we max out at 4%, then we're covering operating, but we are not having any room for the 15% depreciation to be included at all. So that's my only concern with maxing at 4.
I don't know. I'm
Do
still
we have to
uncomfortable
pick
with
a
that high of a
percentage on
number.
it, or- No, I kind of lean towards the middle road, being an enlightened Buddhist that I am, the middle road. No, I have a preference for, but I'm willing to go either way. After their public workshop, we can pick anything.
Well, And I think that's the
Well, the
point.
noticing is before that.
but you're gonna have to give her numbers to work with so she can redo her model.
Yeah.
So you're gonna need to have at least a couple numbers that you're interested in seeing how they calculate through the model, so you know where you're at.
So I'd like to see a not to exceed of 3.75 with an annual automatic at 4, but us aiming for 2% or less. That's what I'd like to see, because the reality, and this is not popular to say out loud, and I get that. This is gonna not be fun for anyone having to hear this. But the reality is while I, as a resident here, don't want to pay no more than another 2% either, and I understand that we have a very low income population. I don't want to be the one who tied this council's hands in an emergency and said, sorry, you have no opportunity to fix this when something bad happens. So I just want to make sure that we give that range and we say, here's the target, but there is that up to in case of emergencies.
That's why we've been working so hard to reduce costs and operating expenses and try and plan for the future. And I know Ron will be a huge part of getting us prepared for the future, but I don't know, I'm just not comfortable locking in a 5+% rate increase and giving us that ability.
Well, that's the thing, we're not locking in that rate
Right.
increase. We're
Giving us the ability to report that out and say that we're gonna go up to that possibly. I don't know. I still don't feel comfortable with even throwing that number out there. It's such a catastrophically large number for people that are already hurt and so bad.
Yeah.
I don't even want to see the 4%, but you know, I think that still keeps us in a solvent enough position that with catastrophes happening, we keep strong reserves, which we've been doing and building on those reserves consistently at a high level since we've been at this rate. I just think it's better to leave it lower.
I'm kind of with you in saying 4 is the top, but I want to see what, 3 looks like as well. So let's do 2, 3, and 4, with 4 as the top.
Well, and I hope I'm being a negative Nancy here. I really do. I hope that I'm being overly conservative on this.
Somebody's got to be.
But, I really hope that's the case. And, I know that this has just been an exhaustive effort since all of us got elected. And, I have to say, it's been a really hard experience for me too, working for PG&E, specifically in the EGI department, because I'm not allowed to touch that project anymore at all. And I engineered the first plan set for that. Like that was like pet project and I'm not allowed to go anywhere near it anymore. And that is really, really hard when we're having this conversation. And I'd love to depend on it, but I just don't know.
Well, let's try some percentages. Do I hear a motion for a percentage?
Like for a not to exceed?
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna break this into pieces, it sounds like.
Not to exceed.
So let's start with a not to exceed.
Okay, I move for not to exceed of 4%.
4%. Do I hear a second?
Second,
All those in favor?
Aye.
No,
All those opposed, abstain.
I'm opposed.
Looks like we have 3 ayes, so,
It was 4.
pardon?
You have 4 and 1 opposed.
4 for 4, right?
Yeah.
4 for 4%.
Yeah.
Okay, that was easy. Now,
So we broke that part out. So, I'm thinking what we
Motion for
discussed
that.
is we'd like to have on the notice more than one number.
okay,
Is that still accurate?
okay.
Yes.
Do I hear a motion for,
Yeah, you're just giving direction. Now, you don't have
Yeah.
to pick the percentage that's gonna be in the notice.
Yeah.
You're just giving, I think you're just giving her numbers to work
Yes.
into her model so you can
Right.
decide what percentages you want to adopt.
Yeah.
Right. But we can't even agree on what direction to give her, so that's why we're doing
No, I
this.
get that, but this has nothing to do with the notice you're going to give it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she already has the 4% built in, so you need to just tell her what other numbers you want her to build into her
Right,
model.
3.
So she can tell you whether you're.
So Carolyn
where
would
you're
like
gonna
to
be on
see
your reserve.
3.
2, 3, and 4. That'd be my request.
Yeah, if we're putting a not to exceed of 4, I would say that we should also show 2 and 3.
okay, somebody want to make that motion?
I'll make that motion. That's what I said in the first place, 2,
Oh,
3, and
since that's
4.
under 4, we don't have to do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So-
I move 2, 3, and 4%.
I had some discussion about a workshop. I think it'd be helpful to have a motion on
Yeah,
whether you want a
That's the
workshop.
next step. So if
Yeah.
we need a motion, I'll make a motion.
Yeah.
That we hold a public workshop. Now, the question is, can we put in there that it needs to be at a time when the majority of our public could potentially attend? Not like on a Tuesday morning, because
I would hope
Can
that
we
we're smart
do-
enough to understand that
Okay.
that's a necessity.
I just didn't know if we needed to get that specific, that it's on an evening or a weekend or whatnot. So
Yeah.
that would be, so I'll move that we do, set up a public workshop and advertise the heck out of it. In May, yes.
All right, so who would like to make that motion?
She did.
Oh,
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstained, motion carries.
May I ask one more question while you're up there? You had we have a very dramatic increase in reserves between 2025 and 2026. I mean, virtually doubles. Well, why is that?
It's because you're receiving those reimbursements back from the state. So you could well end up in a situation where you're in year 4 and you can freeze the rates. I mean, it's the crystal ball, so we don't know. I mean, exactly what's going to happen, but that potentially could
Yeah.
happen.
That's a good idea.
You have all the information you need, Catherine? You have everything you need to proceed?
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna take a 5-minute break. Yeah, the natives are restless.
Negative part decisions.
No, it's not 10 o'clock yet.
Okay, recess is over. We're resuming
They're not my responsibility.
5C. We're moving on to 5C,
Good. Let's move on.
the mid-year budget report.
Next time.
Mid-year budget report.
All right. So unfortunately, the lawyer's been able to be here tonight, so I have a brief statement and then I'll just have to take your questions and email them to her. So, I'll try to keep it brief. It's been a long meeting. With the Assistant Finance Director, we took a comprehensive look at the data, income and expenses for each fund to identify any substantial variances to the fiscal year 23-24 approved budget. The staff report outlines a few key areas that contribute to the variances. Some of the more notable items: an increase in COPS grant revenue for law enforcement. This grant is not guaranteed each year, so we try to stay within the conservative side and not to budget for it. Is it late? Yeah. Yeah, pretty hard this from me. Late interest rates increased this year, or increased this fiscal year, resulting in an increase of revenue across all funds. Staffing vacancies across all operations resulted in decreased personnel costs and some increased professional services to fill, increased professional services to fill the vacancy, like we talked about in the wastewater.
Mhm.
We have to do that. The wastewater treatment plant has had several large equipment repair expenses pending. That will also require large equipment rental expenses. The cost of property and workers' compensation insurance was higher than budgeted for the fiscal year. The cost of chemicals to operate the wastewater treatment plant continues to rise beyond budget expectations. And the 5-year sewer rate study added to the overall professional service cost for the wastewater fund. This was originally budgeted for fiscal year 23-24, but the year delay, and remember that no rates went up over that year. A fund summary page shows the changes in funds. And overall, the details for each change can be found in the additional pages in the staff report. Overall, finance tells us we're in a pretty good position. Again, if you have any questions, we'll have to write them down and send them to Lori. Oh, she loves it.
There's a reason I didn't pretend.
Yeah, I had a question, Shanna. Can you make those a little bit smaller? Is that possible?
Well, you get one of these out of your desk, you can see.
If we could just print them the way it's on there, it would be great. We could flip them in the printout though. Yeah, you got them this way in the printout.
Oh, the landscape.
Nothing I can read up close. Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions?
I'm good with the amendments and I'll put a motion on the table for when we're ready to approve the amendments.
Public comment?
Nope.
Okay, do I hear a motion to approve the
Yes.
mid-year? All those in favor?
Well, and you need a second.
I'll second.
Pardon?
Okay, you got a second, now you can take it.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Now we move on to
Regular old public comment.
public comment.
Yeah.
You may comment on anything that was not on the agenda.
Is that on?
Nick Dion. Canyon Way, Colfax. It sounds like there's plenty of money to go around. There's a lot of good ideas to improve our city, I'm sure, and those are all important, but another important thing is keeping part of our history and our past alive. And I'm aware the previous organization for the 3rd of July has stepped down. I believe if we as a community can come together with help from the city of Colfax and a few organizers can carry on with this special event. I'm sure the process takes a lot of time to plan out. We only have 4 months. Is there any direction you could recommend to keep this tradition alive? Is this something the city can organize with the help of the community or vice versa?
I have a recommendation. If we could find someone, because historically there's always been a point person, someone who was the direct point of contact between the city and a nonprofit. If there was a point person who wanted to come to us with a nonprofit ready to put in the work, we could discuss what roles we might have in order to support that and what funding may be available to support that. But without a nonprofit ready to be the recipient and distributor of those funds, unfortunately, we're kind of tied up in a hard place, unable to move forward. So that would be my recommendation, is if there's someone who feels strongly enough about this to lead a established nonprofit. I need to be clear about that. It needs to be someone like the Chamber of Commerce or somebody that is a trusted nonprofit we could give funds to, but
Like the Lions or?
yeah, just an established nonprofit in this community. But if someone could lead the charge on that and come to this council and make some specific requests for help, that would be a start.
All right. I'll be looking for that. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
All right.
You want to talk first? That's my face.
Go ahead. Let her take a minute.
Okay.
Yes. And yes, Amy will take Auburn money.
Hi, my name's Heidi Harvey. I think you all probably know Dave Johnson.
Dave Johnson, yeah, I've only been involved with the high school for 30 years, 35 years, something like that.
We are here tonight. You received your little postcard. We are right now in the beginning stages of a GoFundMe to fund a new sound system for Marston Stadium at Colfax High School.
So that everybody can hear me.
Right, we kind of wanted to do like that, right?
Yeah.
Yes, I wasn't aware of it until football season last year. So it's been a problem. Dave can give some history.
Yeah, well, the lights went in 1990. We spent 3 years raising the money to try and selling tickets, dollar raffle tickets for a sweatshirt. And I used to get to go over to the visiting team, and they would say, why would I want one of your sweatshirts? I don't care about the goddamn sweatshirt. All I want is your dollar bill. And that's how we raised more money, usually on the far side than we did on the home side, because they got tired of us. But then we got really lucky. We found out that, and I don't want this quoted, don't put it in the minutes, but that they were actually doing a really nice thing for Del Oro and building a whole new.
Wait.
Oh, I'm sorry. Anyway, so we got it. We got the lights. That's the school district decided they would pay for the lights. And then we were able to, what we had raised, we gave to the football program. But it's been 30 years. Basically, there was one time where the little electronics box was repaired. And it's frustrating because my goal is to call as many kids' names as I can. And I usually tell the other coaches, if you don't play everybody, at least give me the parents that are there, so I know, call them. But it's so much more fun when everybody can hear, and that's what we're trying to make it work.
It is. And Marston Stadium is used not only for Colfax High School students, events, Olympic Week, some of their pepper rallies, football games, but the Junior Falcons.
Junior Falcons are there four or five times a year at their games, and
people, all the coming in and the parents from the visiting team, we want them to hear something too.
Right, so the Falcon Foundation, it has organized the GoFundMe. We need to make it really clear, they're not marketing the fundraiser. They're not doing anything other than they put it online for we the people. That's who we are. There's not one group taking it on. I'm Green Line at the high school. I run the Spiritware store, and I think I'm probably the most face there, right? Like that, I'm on the parent teacher alumni committee as well as Green Line. Our group has not taken on the marketing. A few of us are doing it. It's more just a collective group of people at this point. We have a video that is going to be updated to the link if you scan the QR code to make a donation. We will have Dave on that video. It's been a slow moving process, but
That may hurt you.
right, but like we're all fundraising for whatever club our kid is in or sport they're playing. We are doing this on top of every other fundraiser. And we feel like we're always just nickel and diming our parents and our community. So we did get a $10,000 anonymous donation it was fantastic. So it did drop our goal from 30,000 down to 20,000. And like I said, it's a slow start. The football team, literally, the football kids just received the link today, right? And so that's what I'm saying. We are asking if the city would like to help in any way, literally sharing the link, the QR code on social media, text, email. That would be phenomenal. The more we can reach out, the better. If there are funds, I don't, after hearing everything else, I told Andrea, I'm not asking for anything. Like, I want I want nothing. Yes, it is a community stadium, and it would enhance everything about Colfax High School, and you know where our high school stands. People are moving into the community. People are coming from Grass Valley and Nevada City. They're coming here. It is something special. Yay.
Hands up.
Is this a time sensitive request?
It is. So
Okay.
we have an alumnus who it's a, Bluetooth, wireless, state of the art equipment. It's all in the GoFundMe literature if you look and read. So they wanted to end the GoFundMe at the end of February, and I said, no.
They're like, just
We
started. Oh my
started.
gosh.
So I'm not sure it has more to do with the person that is actually installing the equipment
Okay.
and his timeline.
Well, and the other thing is we have to meet, not that there's any requirements for the school, but the school district offices and all these kind of things. And some of it gets built up as you know, with what you run into. We can't just go in and plug these things in and make them work.
They have the plans.
Yeah.
They've approved it. The Falcon Foundation would not go through with the GoFundMe until all of the, what are the plans called? The schematics, everything. They did approve, and they are working on and updating the sound system for Gym A. That was approved. The Falcon Foundation did give a $15,000 donation towards that. The district matched it. The total was 60,000. So I'm not sure why the gym received it, and maybe, right, well, okay, well, it's in the school probably. It's
So I guess what I'm just trying to understand, just for our procedural
Yes.
requirements and for us to be able to take action or not take action is we need to know what the time sensitivity is for you guys to receive any donations in order for this to either move forward, fall through. What are the consequences if you don't get it within a specified timeline? Because usually when we get something during public comment, we have to re-agendize it to take action.
Sure.
Unless there is an imminent timeline that we would potentially go over. So if us putting this on the next agenda to potentially take action would be appropriate for you guys.
I think so.
That would be the easiest thing, because then we can bring better statistics.
Yeah,
to
some
you,
more
that sort of
information.
thing, More information. Yes,
Yeah.
we would just like to have it by the middle of April or the middle of August. for
Yeah.
football season.
Oh, to have the whole
Yeah.
To have the
kit
whole
and
thing
caboodle,
done.
clearly.
I'm sure you
Yeah.
guys can. It's not
So-
controversial, I'm sure you guys can.
And also tomorrow I can go to the Chamber of Commerce to see if they could attach it to their website. That would be
Digital.
immediate.
But yeah, I would be supportive of us putting something on an upcoming agenda to discuss and.
Kim, what did you just tell
would
me?
be
The
great.
girls' basketball team is playing for what?
Yeah, this is the
or
man that's,
Figure out if we can even.
everybody
you
know Dave Johnson started the women's soccer at Colfax.
Yeah.
I don't know how many people know that, but he's the man that started it. And 15 hours after the girls won their championship yesterday,
Yeah.
they went to Placer and they beat Placer.
All right.
And a lot of the same girls are there. So we,
But anyway, the sports program is incredible for Placer for what it does for the community. And we just need some help getting it out into the community. We need help. It's probably the
Thank
best
you.
thing.
So, you said the stadium lights are how old now?
Well, they were put up in August of 1990.
Okay, so I'm working with a company called Eco Green about essentially upgrading all the lights in the city. And what they do is they pay for it with the offset of the cost savings. So if you'd like, you can come by the office sometime this week or next week and I'll give you their contact information.
Look at us.
If you insist, we'll be there.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
okay, thank you.
I'll stop by on the way tomorrow from one meeting to the next.
All right. Any other public comment? Going once?
Yes.
Going twice?
I like all those interactions. It's fun.
Hi, I'm April Doherty. I am a Green Machine board member, but a parent of a student at Colfax High School. And the sound system, if you haven't heard it, is horrible. It's embarrassing. It makes our city look awful. And guests come to football games, teams from other places, and it really is just awful. We miss so much of what Dave says about our players and about the game.
All the announcer, I want you to know that.
And when you travel to other schools that are just as small as ours, their sound systems are amazing. And I don't know if you guys know this, but Colfax High School has to hire in a company every year to do the graduation. They hire a sound company because they can't even use their own loudspeakers. So we also talked at our board meeting about making sure that donors are recognized. So a certain donor amount, potentially you'll have a plaque somewhere, maybe on the snack bar, and it would look great if City of Colfax was one of those donors.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Any other public comment? Seeing none, we will move on to council and staff committee reports. Shall we start at the end?
Yeah,
Ron?
sure. I had a great vacation, so I didn't make it to any of my meetings, but I'll have a better report for the next one.
Okay, Councilman Hilberg.
I went to a fragment of a board meeting for the Sierra Vista Center. I say that because some people left the board and not very many people are left, so we're going to be recruiting board members. And I really don't want to say any more than that. I don't know all the reasons why that happened because I wasn't at that meeting. But I did attend.
Okay, Carolyn.
I was at the same meeting, actually. They let me crash their board meeting last week for the Sierra Vista Center. And technically, as of 2 weeks ago, their application window for new board members is open and it's for anybody in the community. You don't even have to live in Colfax. But there is not yet an application that you can fill out and there is not yet a description of what these board members do. So, but they can have 16 spots and there are only 5 people on that board. So if anybody is up for making some changes at Sierra Vista, they need to be making phone calls to that office to get applications to get on that board.
Who are the 5 board members?
Right now you used to have BJ is also on there, Andrea is on there, Larry is on there.
Nikki.
Connie is still on there, even though she is not in the city hardly at all. She's in Arizona mostly. And there was, who was on the phone with Andrea's phone? Was it Jennifer? Oh, Loriana, yeah, Loriana from the chamber. I have it in, and
Are Nicole and Zach not on? the
no,
board?
they were two that left, correct? I
Oh,
think.
okay.
I think they were the two that left. Otis is left. I know that Jennifer Mullen and her husband also left. It was not a good board meeting 2 weeks ago. Yeah,
Oh,
I was trying to remember
yeah.
who all the names were that I remembered that were there. So they've only got maybe 6 then. They're current out of potential 16 board members. So we need a bunch of community members who want to see some good movement over there. Step up to join the board.
So Larry, question for you.
Yes.
People who are interested at this time, should they email a specific person? What would be the best method of communication?
Say BJ Armando.
Okay,
And BJ's email is Will Stockland's email, but I know there's an email for the Sierra Vista itself, and the current board is taking turns to answer and monitor that email because they no longer have a office manager either at this time.
are there board bylaws available?
They do have some, locating them may be a challenge,
Okay.
from what I've been told.
That's a
But,
problem.
Yeah.
You do have bylaws.
Yes, they have some. The problem is the answer repeatedly was, oh, they're here somewhere.
Get it from the state.
Okay.
So
I will do that.
yeah, they need some help. They need some good bodies over there that are willing to put in some work and time at the community center, most certainly. I did get to oh man, my time's up. That's right. I did get to go to my first ACOG meeting, in person. And when you drive your husband's commuter car and you tell yourself all the way down the hill, remember to turn the lights off because it's raining, and you don't, remember that people down there is not as nice about helping you jump your car. Don't drive your husband's commuter car to save gas. It was very interesting to be able to go to, and it's such, people were very friendly and welcoming. So it was a good experience overall, even though I don't like downtown Sacramento. And then went and bought a jump box to put in my husband's car. So I did have a meeting actually also with the Placer Repertory Theater last week. I did not even realize that they were doing live performances at Railroad Days last year. I missed that on Saturday. But I am having a conversation with them and hoping actually to reach out to the community center and a couple other places about them doing some very interactive story time theater for our kids for a very small cost, if not free. So we're trying to come up with some fun stuff for the kids to be able to do with them. And the chamber, very excitedly after a conversation, Ron and I got to go to a meeting with the Chamber of Commerce. They are putting together a list of all the vacant businesses in town and all their contact information as a way to try to help encourage some businesses to come to go, look, here's these spots and here's how you call them, and you don't even have to track them down. We have all the information for you.
Yeah, what I'd ask is they survey all the
Yeah.
empty retail locations, get the square footage, what was there before, what the current lease is, who to contact, and then we'll print that up and get it out in the field so people can see.
Yeah. And then I actually spent some time with Roger and Nancy over at the Historical Society. And if you guys have never walked into that room that they have at the community center, it is really cool. There is a lot of information and a lot of artifacts over there that they are trying to digitize all of it so that we have access to it. And Roger knows his stuff, everything in there. He knows everything about it. But I know he also needs help with people to help him sort stuff. And even they have this really cool dollhouse that needs to get some repairs done to it. But if you want to be crafty or help with historical documents or artifacts, there's some good folks to check out because they got some really cool stuff over there. That's it.
Trinity, read your phone.
Well,
Helps to be on there. So as far as actual committees, I had a couple PCTPA meetings. Nothing particularly reportable at this time, but we are still working on the funding for all these state mandated EV charging goals. And we're definitely trying to get our involvement in that in a way that'll be beneficial to the county, but also beneficial to us. So more to come on that. I don't have a whole lot else to report out though, as far as committees at this time.
Okay, my turn, I guess. Okay, on the 15th, in Auburn was the Placer County Economic Development Board. And I think Larry's on that board, right? Yeah, and he couldn't make it, so I went in his place. And again, there wasn't anything real profound messages to bring back from them. Then on the 23rd, I drove to Auburn for a 20-minute LAFCO meeting where we put Trinity on the city selection.
I think you meant that the other way around.
No,
You had a city selection committee meeting.
yeah, city selection night, okay. And then that's it. City attorney, what have you been doing all week?
Trying to keep up with the city manager.
He has lots of questions. Okay, again, I need to acknowledge Jen's hard work. We have a new customer service representative that started on Tuesday and is being trained. We also have a new accounting technician scheduled to start on the 7th. And we are partway or midway through the interviews for city clerk. We have some pretty positive candidates for that. So thank you for all that work. More exciting news, we have a meeting scheduled with some representatives of the Colfax Hotel this week, trying to move that project forward. I'll be getting tired of me calling them once a week, but we're gonna get that going. We also have an upcoming SCADA kickoff meeting for Control Point for the SCADA project at the wastewater treatment plant. SCADA is supervising control and acquisition of data. Basically a big computer that monitors lift stations, the plant throughout, and then monitors and alarms, tells you when there's alarms, and allows you to make changes to your processes through the computer, so you don't actually have to go out and push the button. That's exactly what SCADA does. And again, and this has already been touched on, but with the Chamber of Congress, we've been discussing economic development strategies. The square footage of what we have is one thing. We talked about what type of businesses we try to recruit. I heard from a local business owner today that they're considering bringing in some wine tasting. So we'll see how that develops, but that's one of the things that we talk about in the chamber, you know, it's wine tasting, knick-knack shops and restaurants. Is kind of what the other historical communities do that are successful. So we move forward. That's all I got. Okay, item number 9. Control block, community development control block. I think that's city manager report. Yeah, so we have Carl, our city engineer, coming talk to us about. That would just have to ask him.
I know, right? This is the most I've ever been up here. Green light is on this, right? Okay. So the CDBG project, we went through bid. We have tentatively awarded it to Hanson Brothers. And we're looking for council approval tonight. Yes. So yes, and the grant, we were actually really concerned because of what was mentioned earlier with the construction prices going up. Did we hear 37% and 20% or something?
Yeah, I've seen.
Yeah. We were very concerned that this project was gonna come in very unfunded and we're gonna have to figure out how to make that work on top of all the other projects, but it came in the opposite. So we actually have excess. So right now, at the same time, we are looking at adding, I have GHD looking at the Culver Street and Grass Valley crosswalk intersection. So we're gonna try to get that added into the project. Adam Daspy has already said that we can add that and there's not gonna be any issues with it. So yeah, that's a bad corner, so that'll be a nice add to the project. Yeah, yeah. And hopefully there'll still be a little bit left over that we can still throw in somewhere while the project's under construction.
Right, so we'll have to monitor very close and
make sure they don't realize we have that extra money and hit us hard with change orders. So we'll be diligent about that. Make no mistake about it.
Right.
Thank you, Carl. Any questions from the public to Carl? No questions.
Questions, council? Sure, enjoy it.
Do I hear a motion?
Move approval.
All those in favor?
I'll second.
You guys second it. There you go.
All those in favor?
I,
Finally,
Aye.
jeez.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. And now we are on item 10, good of the order. Sean, do you have anything good to say?
Great meeting. Good job, everybody. That's it.
Larry?
Yeah, I'd like to comment about girls' basketball. The girls' basketball team here has qualified for the playoffs 42 consecutive years,
43.
43 now, and this is a standing record. And they have won 13 section championships at their school size, and they just won another one last week. And that qualified them for the Northern California playoffs. And we are a Division IV school, which somewhere around 600 kids. But their record and their success this year caused them to be moved up to the Division II level among much larger schools. And they're capable. If they play their best games, they've beaten some of these teams already. They won a game last night against a very good team. It was a 1-point game that went right down to the last seconds. And they're playing again tomorrow night. They got a home game because they are seeded number 4 of 16, even among the Division II schools. So if you don't have anything else to do, it's a fun way to spend the evening. I go to all their games because I've said this before, I'll say it again. In years, I haven't seen one single girl on a team in this program so much as frown. They don't frown at the officials. They don't frown at their opponents, their coaches, their teammates, the fans. They just play. And great way to spend the evening, great way to support the school, and you'll enjoy every moment of it. So go for it. Oh, by the way, if you do go, you can't go down there and buy a ticket. You have to go out to GoFan, and you can do a search on Colfax and basketball, and you'll find your way to be able to buy a ticket online. You don't have to join. You can just buy it as an outside customer, and they send you an email. And when you go to the ball game, you just bring out your phone and you show them the email. And even if you're technologically challenged, they'll push the buttons on the phone for you, and you'll get to go in.
Larry, I had a question.
Yep.
Do council members get in free?
Absolutely not.
You get charged double.
Yeah.
They do not.
But if you do want to watch at home, you can watch it. You can stream online on the NFHS network. So if you got little kids at home or anything like that, like I do, or if you like to yell at the TV, you could do it without disrupting the game. So that is another option.
I try to help the officials once in a while.
Yeah.
I will say one more thing. When I went there, my wife couldn't go to the game. She wanted to go, so I had an extra ticket.
Mhm.
And I just gave it to the next person coming along that said that they were a senior. And it turned out he was the grandfather of one of the players. And I said, well, I did this for karma, and it's for the girls. And his granddaughter is the one that got the crucial rebound with about 4 or 5 seconds left to save the game for them because it was under the opponent's basket. So I was partly responsible for that victory.
They'll make sure you get to a flat if they're in the seat.
Carolyn, anything good? No. Trinity.
Yeah, I'm gonna second that. Definitely make sure you don't miss out on those games because they are very, very, very entertaining. I'm one of those people who has never historically been into sports. You know, I enjoy watching it when it's on, but I'm not like a follower or a fan really. It gets different when you have kids who play sports, and so that's what got us into it, especially with the girls' basketball. And now I'm a crazy lady, so I have to watch at home. But definitely, I definitely support, if anyone needs help figuring out how to stream it, reach out. We'll help. And then I just want to bring up to Green Machine Crab Feed. That's next weekend. You don't want to miss out on that. That's a really fun event. And if you're trying to find out how to get tickets and you need help, that's another one, reach out. We'll help get you figured out. So that's all I got.
Okay, thank you. My good of the order is I've asked Dave Johnson, the voice of the Falcons, he doesn't need a working speaker system. His voice just carries. So I've asked him to attend the game and just announce the game from where he's sitting. And any good of the order going in this direction?
Nothing more to add. Mr. Mayor.
Oh, does the public have anything good to say?
Thank you. Yes.
Okay, thank you. With that, do I hear a motion to go to the game?
I move we adjourn.
All those in favor?
I.
Aye,
Think enough.
carries. Meeting's over. Thank you.
And it's my bedtime.